Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. I am your host, Nicholas Allen, and my guest today is Randy Surles. You might know him on Instagram as the Story Ninja. He is now a book coach, a military editor, a ghostwriter for action, fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and memoirs. Send him your manuscript today to level it up. But prior to that, he was a Green Beret with the 7th Special Forces Group and a Ranger in the 75th Ranger Regiment, 3rd Battalion before that. He held the positions of an 18 Delta, 18 Fox, and 18 Zulu, and now he's retired, living abroad, helping people tell their stories, kind of like I am, only in a more professional and written down way. So I'll have links to his Instagram and socials and website, thestoryninja.com, in the show description. Today's episode is brought to you by the Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley. Precision Wellness Group helps you fuel your momentum through bioidentical hormone therapy and evidence-based, personalized telemedicine. Dr. Taylor Bosley is a board-certified physician, a U.S. Army veteran, and a former Green Beret. So he knows where you've been, where you want to go, and how to get you there. And he's an actual doctor who can prescribe you actual medicine. It's a bonus. So if you have been thinking about hormone replacement therapy, TRT, HRT, peptides for a while now, or just starting to look into it, look no further than Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley. I'll have links to their website and socials in the show description, along with Randy Surles, the Story Ninja. I do appreciate you guys. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening. Leave us a review and enjoy the show. Randy Surles, welcome to Lesser Known Operators, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. I love a message saying, hey, are you looking for people to come on the show? Absolutely. I'm always looking for people to come on the show. And I'm sorry I was short with you because you sent me this message, and a long message. And I said, yep. And I sent you the calendar link. I was busy doing something else at the same time. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry I was short with you. I was doing something right then. But that's my whole selection process. Were you in SOF? Yes. Okay. Come on the show. Not that it's not exclusive, but I want to give everybody a chance to sit down and tell their story. And I'm very glad you reached out because, again, we rise out of the lesser known operators realm a little bit of like somebody that's more well known, but you fit into exactly what I bet there is very few Green Berets that know there's another Green Beret ghostwriting and helping people write their novels and books. And if they did know, just like I do for some of my other stuff, the big Green Beret owned businesses, I would rather go to them than anybody else just because we got the secret handshake and things. So I'm excited. Hopefully I get you a few more looks of people to be like, oh, well, I'll just talk to that guy. So I'm excited to have you on, and hopefully some people find out what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know if I coined this term. Maybe, I'm sure it existed before I came around, but I have the domain name militaryeditor.com. And because it describes who I am, 32 years in the military, and I'm an editor, I'm a ghostwriter, I'm a book coach. And then I'm also servicing, service members of all the different services, the military who need editors, ghostwriters, and book coaches. So that's why I chose that domain name. Yeah, I've had people specifically find me because they put military editor in Google. I'm the first one to pop up because there's not a lot of us. And they came and said, I wanted another veteran. I wanted another military guy who could understand it. And the good thing about, I have a partner too, who is my stepdaughter from my first marriage. I know we weren't going to talk about my marriages in here, but
that was quick. We dipped right into that right away, and you said it right a couple seconds ago.
Yeah, but she's my partner. She's awesome. She graduated Texas A&M at 19. She became a school teacher. Then now she has 3 kids that she homeschools. And I linked up with her at my son's graduation, who's her brother, obviously. And I said, what are you doing? And she's like, homeschooling. I'm busy. I was like, wow, man, you're so smart. And you're like, she reads like a book a day. She reads so fast. I was like, let me train you, and then you could find some clients. And so I trained her. We did a client together, and her insight from a female perspective and a non-military perspective added to me on the other side of the coin, which is like I understand what they're saying, I understand all the words and the GWAT and all that stuff, and I can explain that to her, and then her insight and additions that she added, I was like, hey, we should team up. We have something unique here that's not out there. We can be a civilian and a military guy, a man and a woman, and edit not just military but anything with all our different perspectives we bring to the table. And so that's been a really big plus for my business, but also for all the people that hire us. We give that, especially the military, who most of them are men, and they don't know what they're writing. And she'll look at this as like, I don't think you meant to say this. And if you don't mind me monopolizing this real quick, when I wrote Scott Mann's book, I think you're talking to Scott Mann later, right? No.
I just checked his calendar this morning. He'll be traveling later this week, so it just looked. It's the same date, but now next month. So, but soon he's on the schedule.
So I helped him. We worked on this book together, Operation Pineapple Express, about the evacuation of Afghanistan. And there was some of the people that were helping out with the evacuation obviously were married, and the way they talked about their family sometime wasn't, because they were like, their family was bugging them to be a part of the family while they were like totally in sync focused on getting their allies out of Afghanistan. And there was some fights going on, I imagine, and some other things. And when I read it through it, and Scott read through it, and the editors, that all the male editors from Simon Schuster read through it, no one caught it. And I gave her a first draft, and she's like, hey, did you want his wife to look like a bad person, not supporting him? And I was like, well, no. It's like, because you put her in a really bad light. And so we went back and looked at it, and we actually did an interview with her and wrote a chapter in her point of view so she could explain to the reader, like, these are my thoughts. Like, he had already left the army. He had left the war. He was a school teacher. And now he's back in. We went through therapy to get away from all that. And now he's back in. And my concern was for my husband and my family, and how this is going to all pan out when this was over. Like, when it was over, whether it was good or bad, he's going to have all that trauma again, and we're going to have to do this all over again, start from scratch. And that was my concern. And putting that in the book, I think, made it so much more powerful. And probably, gave a lot of insight to a lot of people about the plight of the families and things like that.
Yeah, man, that's one thing popped in my head while you're saying that. Man, you must have been rough on your team sergeants and sergeant majors for them writing NCORs and review and ratings and rewards and stuff. If if this is your passion.
Well, I mean, I dropped out of college to join the army. And then and while I was in the army, I was like, well, I'm going to have to get out someday, so I better get a degree. So I went with whatever stuff I had. And I went to the counselor. I was like, I want the fastest degree and whatever. And then she's like, well, with all this stuff, you can get a history degree if you take 12 more classes. Like, done, let's do it. So I took the 12 classes. I got a BA in U.S. history. And I was like, well, since they're going to pay for it, I might as well just work slowly towards my master's. This was like, I got my BA in 2000. I came in the army in 86, 87. And so 13 years. And then I started pursuing that. I was like, well, history, I should do international relations. So I'm taking international relations, and the instructor's like talking about the invasion of Panama. I was like, that's not how it happened. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I was there. And none of that's what you just said. Is it accurate? He's like, well, that's what the books say. I was like, I don't care. I just said it. And then they're talking about the border war between Peru and Ecuador. And I'm like, I was on the border, man. There's people shooting. And he's like, no, it's pretty peaceful. I was like, not really. And so, then I realized, I've been in the international relations for the last 10 years, as far as anything with the military on the ground, almost all of them. And I was like, what am I learning? What am I going to do with this? Am I going to be a teacher? I don't want to be a teacher. And so and then I moved to Colombia for 4 years. And I was, first couple of years I was involved in trying to figure out how to rescue these hostages when they got rescued in 2008. And then after the American hostages got rescued in 2008, I really didn't have anything I had some administrative stuff, but I was like, what am I going to do? and one of my soldiers was getting an MBA. I had a couple different service members. I had some Marines and some Air Force and some Navy under me, and this E7 in the Air Force was getting his MBA. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could do that. I guess I could probably use that. So I started an MBA program with University of Maryland, University College, or whatever it's called, UMUC, UCUM, something like that. And I got like six or seven classes into it, but the cohort was a bunch of, you know, turkeys, because they're like, people would go like, I'm just in here to get a C. If I get a C, I'm fine. So don't expect me to do anything. But we have to do group projects where everyone has to like carry their weight, or someone has to carry the other guy's weight. And I'm not a C guy. And so I'm just like, I did 2 projects with them, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. I don't want to do this. So I dropped out of my second master's program, and then I was like, what do I want to do? And I was like, I want to write. I always wanted to write. And so I looked, and there's only one master's in creative writing that I could do almost completely online, and that was at University of Texas in El Paso. And so I applied, and I had an old girlfriend that we were still good friends, and she was in charge of like the journalism. And she's the only person I knew who's in academia. And she was in the University of Alaska. She was in charge of the journalism program. So I wrote her out of the blue, like on Instagram or Facebook, I don't know, because I didn't have anything else. And I was like, hey, I'm applying for this program. I was wondering if you, and so she did. She wrote a recommendation for me because I needed a recommendation from someone in academia, and I hadn't been, and I didn't know anyone else to do it. And I got in, and I did it. Finished it in 2018, the year I got out. I actually got out in 2019, but it was almost out in 2018. And yeah, I wanted to. So I wouldn't say I was always smart. I mean, people used to say that because when I went on deployments, one Contico box would be full of books. And I would be like, okay, this is like my business. I want to learn about business. And this is about like history and current events. And this is like my fancy science fiction, military thriller stuff. And I'd have like 50 books in one of my Contigo boxes, and I'd read almost all of them. I started a business in Fayetteville year or two before you got there. It was before the 9/11. It was called Food Dudes. It was the original Uber Eats. We delivered from Bennigan's. We delivered from what's a really Monterey's, the Mexican restaurant. We delivered from like 8 different restaurants. We delivered their food just like Uber Eats does. And but it was before GPS, before cell phones, so it was really hard to run. But I put it all together, and I did the web page myself. When I was on deployment, I learned how to make a web page in 24 hours. And while I was given night after classes, I built a web page for my business. And then when I got home, I launched it, and I had business proposals, and I'd show up at Bennigan's and go, hey man, I was thinking about delivering your food. Everyone loves it. Everyone comes here, and I guess they love the food. What do you think? And so I had like eight or 10 restaurants in the end. I had Bella Via, which was an Italian restaurant. I don't think it's there anymore. So I had like one of each different kind of genre of food, and then I deliver all over Fayetteville. But so I don't know if I was super smart, but I didn't. The only time I critiqued my NCOERs is if it was something not deserved.
I do got to give you a little bit of a hard time though, because right before we started recording, you sent me your bio, and it reads he spent 32 years in the United States Army in the Army Rangers. He then spent 20 years in the U.S. Special Forces. So your bio first line reads you spent 52 years in the United States military.
Good, right? I'll fix that. That's what I send to people. Maybe I have to rewrite it. But no, I spent 4 years in the Rangers, and then the rest of the time in the Green Berets.
No, I saw it, and I was like, yeah, you just, because whenever people ask me for a bio, I send them out this real generic one, and I'll read it back sometimes and go, this is terrible, and then I'll still click send. Okay, there we go, because I don't know if people read it, and then I'll be out somewhere giving a speech, and they'll start reading it, and I'll go, "Oh man, I really should have written something better than that." No, fuck, that's awesome, man. Like, so, but what is it about? Because you said you're working with people and you're doing your own stuff. Um, how did? Because it's got to feel good to finish, because that's a long project, a big investment of putting words together of not only yours or somebody else's. Is it's got to be pretty rewarding when that whole process comes together.
Yeah, I started just editing. You want to know how I got started in editing? Because the MFA in creative writing did not start me in editing. And like,
No,
if I had not got the MFA in creative writing, I would be if I and I started earlier with what I'm doing now, I'd be a lot better. But if I had not got it and started at the same time, I'd be about the same place, to tell you the truth. I don't think my only thing my MFA in creative writing gave me was a something to put on my resume, which I don't know if it influences anyone. No one's ever asked me to show it. Like, like, hi, I'm an editor and I have an MFA in creative writing from the University of Texas, and no one's ever said, really, prove it. So I don't think anyone cares. There doesn't seem to be a lot of vetting of qualifications. The vetting for qualifications for most editors and ghostwriters is, what have you done? And you can give a list of books that your name's not on and said, look, I did this, and I did Fourth Wing and Harry Potter, and you can write down whatever you want. No one's checking it, and the only thing they could do is maybe write the author if the author was going to write you back. But there's nothing to say that you were a part of that. Fortunately, I've had a couple authors that were nice enough to put me on the cover, like these two science fiction books right here. She put me on the cover as the editor, which was really nice and gave me a little bit of credit there. But no one's ever asked me. I got a lot of testimonials and book covers on my webpage, which I was involved in. But no one's ever asked me for proof of anything. Um, so when I thought I was going to be a writer. I got my MFA in creative writing. I finished my thesis, my 350-page book about the first female Green Beret before they were allowed to come in the Green Berets. So I wrote the book before that. And she goes, and her father was killed by someone in Afghanistan, and she gets assigned to 7th Group, and they go to Afghanistan, and she ends up hunting the guy down. But while I was writing it, I was assigned to U.S. Army Africa. I was in Vicenza for 4 years in Italy, and so I was in Nigeria at the time. I was finishing my thesis at night, and I got stuck, and I called my thesis director. I was like, "Hey, everyone else, all my peers are turning in like 120 pages of like short stories. They're saying like they're turning in like 10 short stories or something like that they wrote during the last 4 years of the master's program, because the MFA for creative writing is 36 hours long, which is longer than a MBA. It's longer than most master courses. It's a 3-year curriculum, and it took me 4 years to do it, because it took me 2 years to write the thesis, and I was stuck. And I was like, I mean, I didn't want to write the rest of the book. And I was like, can I just stop? I mean, I got way more pages. I got like 250 pages. And he's like, you have to have a beginning, middle, and end. I was like, easy, the end. And he's like, no, 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 no. And I was like, God dang. And then I was working out in the gym there at the Hilton, and I was listening to a podcast called Story Grid, which is where I end up getting my editing experience. And they had this really good they had a book, and they had a podcast about how to edit your books, and how do you plan your books and write your books. And I listened to it for a while. I bought the book. I read the book. I wrote the rest of my book in like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I sent it in. And when I got the professors I had to have 4 professors, and I had to defend my thesis, my book, which was the silliest thing I ever did. And they said, hey, the second half of the book was a lot better. It was great. And I was like, maybe there's something to the story grid thing. I was in the middle of a divorce. Once again, we go back to my divorces. I was in the middle of a divorce. I was 50, 32 years in the military, 31 years in the military, going on 32. And I had planned to walk the Camino de Santiago to figure my life out, which is what a lot of people do. Are you familiar with the Camino de Santiago at all?
I am not. I haven't heard of that one before today. And if I have, I forgot it.
So the Camino de Santiago, there's a bunch of different routes, but the primary route's called the French Way. It's 500 miles from the Pyrenees and the mountains in France, a little town in the Pyrenees. You cross the border on the first day of hiking, and then you walk across the northern plains of Spain to a place called Santiago de Compostela, where supposedly St. James' bones are buried after Christ rose from the dead and was brought to heaven. The 12 disciples spread out to spread the word, and James went all over the place. And when he died, supposedly the Catholic Church moved his bones to Santiago de Compostela. It's this huge cathedral. And so this used to be a pilgrimage for monks and religious people, and they would walk across Europe, and there would be people in these villages along the way, and they would take care of them and house them and feed them, and they would walk to St. James to pay homage to St. James. So nowadays, it's also called a pilgrim, and the people who walk it are called peregrinos, which are it's pilgrims. And there's hostels built all along the route in these little villages, and you walk. I don't know. Every day is a little different, but you walk anywhere from 15 to 25 miles a day. Most people carry 15 or 20 pounds. You're supposed to carry like less than around 10% of your weight. Of course, I was a ranger and a Green Beret, so I said 40 pounds will be just right. So the first week I was carrying 40 pounds. And at the end of the week, I saw what everyone else was carrying. And I was like, okay, what am I not used in the last week? Threw it all out, and I got it down just under 20 on the way out. But you stay in hostels every night. You eat at the hostel's breakfast and dinner, or you can eat dinner on the town if you want. Usually dinner's included with your hostel rate. Hostels cost, when I went, they cost anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks a night. And then you eat on the economy in a village on the way while you're walking during the day. And you meet people from all around the world doing this for all kinds of reasons, figuring out their life. People just graduated medical school and were trying to figure out what to specialize in. One lady got invited to be part of one of the first female priests for the Anglican Church. And she was deciding if she wanted to do that and go through the prejudice of being a woman in a man's world. Lots of people, one guy was pushing a wheelbarrow full of all his worldly belongings through the whole trail. There's a movie someone made called Push, about a guy in a wheelchair and his buddy who pushed him through the whole trail, all 500 miles. And there's people that just broke up with their boy girlfriend. They just got divorced. They are trying to figure out their life, and they all have reasons. And the first week, everyone's really quiet about the reasons, but for whatever happens, I don't know why, after the second week, people just open up and they blah, everything comes out. And so everyone, you make some really great friends. I met my wife on the second day. The wife, we got married a couple of years ago. She was Hungarian, and we walked the whole thing together after we met on the second day we met, and then day 4 we started walking it together. But it takes about 30 days. Doesn't cost that much. Relatively speaking, it costs like, I don't know, $35, $40 a day, if relatively speaking. And then lots of adventures. Like I got so many stories from the Camino. It's crazy. And while I was walking, after I met my wife, I was walking, and I got an email from the Story Grid, the podcast, and the newsletter I subscribed to, and it said, "Hey, we're going to train editors in our methodology." And so, it's in Nashville, and the timing was just during my terminal leave, so it's kind of a sign. And the amount it cost was the amount I was cashing in for my leave, just about the same amount. And I was like, hey, this is perfect. So I signed up. I did a couple weeks in Nashville with them, and then I had to do 6 months of research and homework to turn in a project to show that I understood their methodology. And then they blessed off on me and said, you're a certified Story Grid editor. And then they started sending me clients. So that was my first client. They sent me, in fact, it was this science fiction author right here, Kay Pimpinella. She wrote a book series called The Time Rangers. And I was like, I am the perfect guy to help you with your book. And I read it, and I said, elite units throughout time have always had a creed. And you should think of a creed you could give the Time Rangers. I'm going to give you a creed for the U.S. Army Rangers as a kind of a something to give you some ideas. So I gave it to her after she had written the book, rewritten the book a couple of times with my advice, and she wrote the Time Ranger Creed, which was very similar to the U.S. Army Creed, recognizing that as a volunteer, as a Time Ranger, fully understanding my responsibility to reinforce the time compendium or whatever, all these words and stuff like that. And she placed it in there right at the right moment, like after a ranger had died heroically, and they were burying him, and they all said the Ranger Creed. It was really moving. I was like, man, I did that. That was awesome. So I always try to slip in Ranger Creeds and dragons in the books that I influence.
Dragons, you said?
Well, can't lose with a dragon.
No. I mean, unless it's a children's book about elephants or something like that. But so you take how long was this course to get Ominous Dominus in their ways of editing?
Oh, this was the second course they had run. They'd run a smaller course for like 20 people the year before, or maybe 2 years before. And so they wanted more because they wanted to make a brand out of this and have a lot of people. And I work for them as a contractor now for their company, helping mentor people to write better. So the course was a week, a little bit over a week, I think, but it was just like 10 hours a day. And it was full of, they gave me a big book and lots of instruction, and you can reach out to us whenever. And then we had to go home, and they gave us 3 projects we had to turn in to prove that we understood the methodology. And then we turned it in, and they looked at it, made sure it was all correct. And they said, yeah, you're good. And that was the second one. Then they did 2 more classes, and they haven't done classes in a while. And the other 2 classes had different requirements because the methodology and the business was growing, and they were putting more SOPs together, and they started having video classes that they would give you to watch before you would get there, to the training and things. And then COVID happened, so they had to do everything online for a while. So there was a lot of back and forth on that. Now there's probably about, I don't know, I have no idea, like 30 to 40 qualified guys and only about half of them work for them right now. The others went off and did their own thing. Either they write their own books or they have an editing business like I do.
Is this a publisher that's going to outsourcing to an editing company, and then they're filtering work down to you guys, or what's the process look like for like the chain of custody here?
So initially, Sean Coyne and Tim Grahl are the 2 co-founders of the Story Grid. And Sean Coyne has the same amount of time in publishing as I have in the military. So over 30 years. He worked for various publishers and various, jobs. And he helped edit Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire. He helped write Bagger Vance. He helped edit most of Stephen Pressfield's books. He was his editor for the publishing company for a while, and he's got a laundry list of best-selling authors that he's worked with. And so when he wrote the book, Tim Grahl was a self-employed web. He helped books become bestsellers. He created a program, and he wrote a book, Sell Your First 1,000 Books, copies or something like that. And he created a program where people would come to him, and he's got a laundry list of books that he helped become bestsellers. And he had a blueprint where he's like, okay, we got to get a web page. We got to get this out. We got to get the noise out there. We got to get the reviews, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of his went on to become New York Times bestselling authors. And you may find this surprising, but just because you're a best-selling author doesn't mean your book's great all the time. You got to be discovered, and you got to fight. Your readers got to find you and things like that. So he was an expert at finding the readers for the books so they could get on the bestseller list. So they came together, and he called up after reading the book. He called up Sean and said, "Hey, man, I want to learn how to write. I think we should do a podcast. This was like probably 2012, maybe 2014, 13, something like that. So it's a while back. He's like, hey, I read the book. I love it, what it says. I'm not sure I understand all of it. I'd love for you to mentor me. I think we should do a podcast and show people how to write a story that works, which is the kind of the theme logo of the whole story grid, writing a story that works. So they did. He's like, and he would start the podcast with, I'm Tim Grohl. I'm a new author. I've never written anything in my life. And Sean Coyne, with 35 years of experience in the publishing industry, wrote this book, and he's going to mentor me to write a book. So over the next 2 years, he wrote a book called The Threshing, and he published it. Now, during that time, they decided to make the story grid, and they started to train the editors, and that business became a lot of other things involved. And they want, what their goal is to mentor writers to write with their methodology, which they are convinced is the best way to write a really compelling book. And then they will publish it. Yeah. So the publishing part, right? So basically,
Yeah.
if you go through mentoring from one of their trained people like me and their methodology, and they also have a course, or not a course, a program, a mentoring program, which I work at. They pay me as an independent contractor over there. In addition to my separate business that I also do book coaching, ghostwriting, and editing. If you go through their process and you do their book with their instructions, then they'll publish it for you. They'll offer to publish it. And most of the publishing companies like Simon & Schuster, the big five especially, they'll take like 85% of your royalties and you get 15%. And ideally, they give
That
you
sounds like a lot.
it is a lot, but they do a lot of work, right? So they're going to provide an editor for you. They're going to provide a copy editor, a line editor. They're going to format it. They're going to get an art guide to help you with your cover. They're going to do some marketing for most of the books sell within the first 2 weeks. So they focus their marketing for those first couple of weeks, and then they kind of forget about you and you have to market the rest for 15% of your royalties. But they do help you get the initial marketing. They'll help you get on podcasts, but you can do that yourself if you have your own, contacts. So they will do all that for you. And then they're taking a risk on you, right? They're going to, all that they do for you, that's going to probably cost $10,000 or something, at least, maybe more, depending on the quality of editors and how many times they got to edit it. So that costs a lot of money. And most books sell less than 500 copies. Even the books that they bet on and they put to print still, so most of them only sell less than 500 copies. So if you only sell 500 copies, they lost on their bet. So they're betting that they're going to get a couple winners. If they get 10% winners, they come out ahead. And that's the bet that they do. So the New York Times bestseller Operation Pineapple Express probably sold 100,000 copies, somewhere around there, give or take, right? Total, since it came out in 2022, right? And the author got 85%, which he split with his co-author, and the author got 15% of the royalties, but he got a pretty big advance. I don't know how much, a couple 100,000 probably, I don't know. But it was current events at the time when they signed the contract. There was 10 publishing companies bidding for it. He had an agent. He at one time he had a movie director interested in it, and he bought the rights to make a movie out of it, which didn't come to fruition because of the writers strike at about the same time. But so all that happened because he had an agent, and then they had a bidding war with about 10 different publishers, and then the person who won the bidding war was offering the big advance because it was, he got this done 2 weeks after the last plane left Afghanistan. So it was like current news. And the deal was they had to get it turned in 6 months. So we didn't start writing the book till January. It was due March 30th. So it took us 3 months to write it.
I assume that's not very much time.
It's I was working like 50 hours a week on that thing. And after I finished it, I said, I don't care if every book I write from now on is a New York Times bestseller or not. I'm never working 50 hours a week again. That's why I got out of the army. I don't want to work. I tend to work 20, 25 hours a week now, and I'm fine with that.
Living the good life, living the good life. Did that come to you through your established job, or did that come to you through the Green Beret network?
So, good question. Uh, Scott Mann was in seventh group, but I didn't know him. He was famous in seventh group because he wrote Game Changers, which was a book about the village stability operations, and he is partly responsible for the village stability operations that were done started in like 2011, 2012 in Afghanistan, where Green Berets and a variety of other special operations units were living in small teams inside the villages and helping the villages stand up against the Taliban. So he wrote that, and he would give lectures to people, to units deploying soft units, special forces units that were deploying like as a group, like the two battalions from first group that would deploy over to Afghanistan would be, you know, briefed by him. And I know in seventh group it happened, in third group I don't know if it happened in all the other groups, but basically he would talk about village stability operations, and he would brief all these people and make sure they understood what the intent was behind everything. Um, I didn't know him because while he was rising to power, for lack of a better word, while he was rising and to be in his notoriety, I was in Colombia for 4 years. So I didn't, even though he was in seventh group, he was in a different battalion. And when he started becoming popular because of what he did with the village stability stuff, I was in Colombia. And when I came back, I didn't deploy to Afghanistan ever again. After I came back from Colombia, I was promoted to sergeant major. My first mission was as a company sergeant major in charge of everyone we had in South America at the time. And then when I came back, I did a bunch of other operations stuff before I moved to Italy. So since I never went back to Afghanistan, I never exposed to what he was doing. But my old commander introduced me to him. He said, "Hey, you should meet Scott." Scott wrote a play called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. And he's been pushing that all over the United States, New York, all the big cities in the eastern coast. He's been up and down there, and he's it's about PTSD and a Green Beret team sergeant and things like that, and it's pretty good. And so I went to the play. I shook his hand because I said, "Hey, Chris said I should meet you," and he's like, "Yeah, you studied under John Coyne." And Stephen Pressfield wrote the introduction to Game Changers, the book I wrote. And I'm working on a book right now, and I want you to help me. And I was like, okay. So when I got home, I emailed them, and we started working on that book. And we worked on that book for a year, and we were just about finished with it. And then the Afghanistan evacuation happened, and he went dark. We were doing the final, like, hey, do the final proofreading and make sure we got it all right. And he just stopped talking to me. I was like, what is going on? And I was in Croatia at the time. And I wasn't really paying attention to the news because I stopped listening to the news because it's all bad news. And so I didn't know what was going on. And finally, after the Afghanistan, I mean, I wasn't totally blacked out. I kind of knew some stuff in Afghanistan was going on, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. And I didn't have all my contacts there. Last time I went to Afghanistan was in 2006, because in 2007 I moved to Colombia, and then I never went back to Afghanistan after that. And I went 3 times. I went 2006, 2005, and 2002, and then so it was all early Afghan war stuff. And so after the evacuation of Afghanistan, he was figuring everything out, and he got the deal. He called me up and said, "Hey, I want you on board. I'm working with a journalist, but I think I need you. I need a sergeant major to organize everything. We're gonna have to do like 60 hours of interviews, and we're gonna have all this stuff. We're gonna have to figure it all out." And I was like, "Yeah." So I signed a contract with them. I started working. I went to all the interviews. Initially, all I was doing was I was like, we didn't start till January, but we started doing the interviews in October, November, right? And I was like, "Hey, maybe we should like make a plan," you know? And they're like, "Ah, we got to figure this out." And so I started making a plan. Like after I heard all the interviews and figured out what everything was, what it was all about, and everything, I put it together. I put a PowerPoint slideshow because that's what I do. I'm a sergeant major, and I put it together, and then I I I went to the 5th to 10th of January. You know, this is like less than 3 months to write the book now. We haven't even started. And we go to the publisher and we're all sitting there and the publisher like he's got a bunch of whiteboards and we're all zoomed in and he's like, "All right, let's make a plan." And I'm like, and they're talking and I'm like, I got a plan." And they're like,
Yeah.
"You got a plan?" It's like, "Yeah, I got this PowerPoint slideshow." We're like, "Really? PowerPoint?" And the publisher's like, "Who uses PowerPoint?" It's like I was like, so I sent out PowerPoint to everyone. They're looking through it. It's like, okay, yeah, yeah, this looks good. So they tweak it, and then we get basically a table of contents out of that outline. And then next thing for the next week, I outline every single chapter because in the story grid methodology, there's a way to make a compelling chapter. There's a way to build tension, and there's elements that need to be there. So I outline every chapter. I link all the interviews that have to do with this chapter so we can, and then I listed like a page of quotes from the interviewees that they can use as live quotes in the when they write the scene. And then the two authors went to town writing the scene, and I was basically editing. They turn stuff in, I'd edit it, and then either turn it back into them or I'd say this one's good. And I had a plan because that's what they hired me to do, accountability. I'm like, all right, we got to write 6 chapters a week, three from each of you, ready to go. And they kept falling behind. Like every free week, they got 3 or 4 maybe, so they're like half as much. So by March 1st, we were barely half done, and we had 4 weeks left. And one of the guys is like, "We're gonna have to ask for more time." I was like, "Okay, I don't know anything about that. I'm just here. I'll be in the back of the Zoom room." See how this works. So he goes, "Hey, we need more time. We need another month." And the Simon and Schuster guy is like, "Well, yeah, we can do that. But see what happens is when you sign a contract to get it done by March 30th, we have another contract that's going to be, what will happen is when if you turn it in March 30th, then our editors will look at it in April, give it back to you. You check the changes, then we go back to the editors. They do another one. Meanwhile, we'll be working on the cover, and then there's going to be this and that, and it all gets together, and then it gets launched on August, which is the anniversary, which is when all the news cycles are going to kick in, and that'll be the best for marketing. If you turn it in a month late, well, guess what? You start conflicting with the book that comes after you that we're supposed to edit during this time and make the cover for it. And we have a contract with them. So we can't do that. So we're going to have to move your book to the end of the line because you violated your contract. So we won't be able to get to it till December, which means you're going to miss the anniversary of the evacuation of Afghanistan, which you're going to miss all the social media and the news stuff for the marketing. And it's not going to sell as many copies. And also, since you violate your contract, you're not going to get the rest of your bonus. And they're like, "Oh crap." And they're like, "But I'll let you guys think about that. I'm going to sign off." And so he signed off, and they're like, "We got to get this finished." And so they're like, "Hey, can you write some of this?" I was like, "Yeah, I can write some of it." So we split it up, and then we turned it in like the day before it's due. No, I think it's the day of the day was due. So
Sounds like, you were tired and you're like, I want to take it easy. And you keep taking on projects to not take it easy. Do you think that's a carryover subconsciously of I got to stay busy?
no, I don't think so. I think that this was a once in a lifetime. I made it a once in a lifetime thing because I don't want to work like that anymore. Literally 50, 60 hour weeks. I mean, for those, especially that March. And then, but I told myself, well, I wasn't even married then. I got married soon afterwards, but I was like, I went through a bunch of marriages while I was in the military because of all the time I spent doing my job, and I didn't want to do that again. And I like to be this to be my forever wife. And I told her this is just a one time thing. I'm never going to do this again. I promise. I've said that before to other people, but I really mean it. And so that's what I meant. And so after this, I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me write a query letter for a publisher?" I was like, "I can do that. I'll help you write a query letter for a publisher, see if a publisher or an agent wants to pick you up and publish it. But if they put you on some crazy timeline, I'm not in. I'm not doing it. Okay. I will help you if you want to do it before we send the query letter. I know because the thing is, you send the query letter, you send it to your agent, you get an agent, the agent represents you, he shops it around the publishers, publisher picks it up, they agree on an advance if there's an advance. Like fiction books from unknown authors will get, if they're really good, might get $5,000 or $10,000 maybe. Nonfiction books that are current events that are like happening right now, they can go for a couple 100,000, quarter million more. Um, but it doesn't matter because I don't want to work that much. I don't care how much you pay me. I don't want to work that much anymore. And so the fiction books, I'm like, if they give you like a deadline of like 6 months and we haven't even started, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want, I refuse to be on that kind of deadline. If they give you, if we work on it and we're like three-quarters of the way through, and now and then you do the query letters and they go, "Hey, you got 4 months to finish it." I'll do that. I think that's doable without killing myself. But but most of them want the advance, and I'm just like, if it's fiction, I'm like, there's no advance. I mean, what advance is going to help you where you're at? Is $5,000 going to help you for the next 6 months? What is that? That's two mortgage, two rent payments, or whatever you're doing, two mortgage payments. I mean, that's what are we talking about? So that's kind of how I go forward with my clients. I'm not going to overwork myself. I'm 50. I don't even know how old I am now, 57 or something like that.
Okay. So that's kind of their process, and it's the same with everything in a private business. You know, seems like everything's a fucking emergency to get done as soon as possible, just like in the military. But what's your process now? Because you said you're kind of working with guys and helping them along the way, but you also want to start a nonprofit to where you're working 20-ish hours a week
Well,
and
so
get that going.
right now I work about 20, 25 hours a week. I work four four or 5 hours a day, maybe, and I try not to work on the weekends. Um, I take one developmental edit client a month, which is that's someone who has a draft done and they want me to look at it and check the plot and make sure the plot makes sense and the subplots make sense and they're all integrated and they make they hit their beats for their genre because each genre has kind of like obligatory scenes that a reader expects. If you're reading an action or thriller book, you expect the bad guy and the good guy to confront each other at the end. And if you didn't see that, you wouldn't be very happy with the ending. If there was no, conclusion, if John Wick didn't kill the guy who killed his dog at the end, that wouldn't have been a very, very exciting ending to the book or to the movie. So that some people don't do that. They think they're being tricky and they're like, and the bad guy gets away and they never meet man to man, face to face. And you're like, that's just a bad story, man. That's not tricky. And you have to tell them that because your reader is going to get through this book anticipating that the hero and the villain are going to come face to face at some point. And if they don't, if you trick them out of it, they're going to be so pissed. You're going to have so many low ratings on Amazon. No one's going to recommend this book. If you get under 3 stars on Amazon, you can't even market your book on Amazon. So that's something, think about that, right? If a guy's writing a book and it's his first book, and it might not be great, okay, but he writes it. He describes it perfectly on Amazon. This is what this book's about, and he does an okay job. It's an okay average story. It's not fantastic, okay. And maybe it's got a couple spelling because he self-published it and he didn't do a good job, copy editing. Though there's no real excuse to have a lot of errors now with Grammarly and all these other things. You could, if you don't, you can do that. You can do a pretty good job with that. If it's bad spelling errors and stuff, then I'll give it a 2 because I'm like, you didn't even try, man. But but if it's a decent story, I don't even give 2s and 1s. If it's a decent story and whoever is the author described it well and it's okay, I'll give it at least a 3. Because if you give it less than a 3, if it gets an average of less than a 3 stars, like I've seen people give 1 stars because they're like, yeah, I don't really like these kind of books. Why did you rate the dude, man? Don't rate the dude with a 1 star and you don't even like these type of books. That's ridiculous. You just ruin that guy. He'll never be able to sell that book. He can't market it. It'll never appear on anyone's like next on the bottom of Amazon because Amazon doesn't want to recommend bad books. So you just screwed that guy so he can't market this book anymore. If it's not your genre and you read it anyway, or you then you're dumb for one. Why did you after the first 10 pages? Why did you keep reading if you don't like those books? you know,
Yeah.
but so or they're like, I saw a couple spelling errors, so I gave it a 2 star because he could have done better. Hey, I've seen spelling errors in Stephen King's books. People miss stuff. So, but not like 10 on each page. That's inexcusable. But if you got like 10 or 15 in the whole book, I mean, whatever. So people give the star. They think they got the power, and they do in a way, and they give these really ridiculous ratings for no reason, not understanding what these mean. That it literally means whether you can sell the book or not to anyone. And just because you didn't like it doesn't mean someone else won't.
All that shit is it adds up, and people don't think about it that way, right? 'Cause there's much smarter algorithms looking at these things than you are. um, Same with the comment section and reviews on my show. I'm like, please guys, leave me a review or a comment, or even a comment. Even a bad comment telling me I suck is much more helpful than somebody that leaves nothing.
Yeah, no,
That's like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. It's the algorithms eat that stuff up. So going back to your question, what do I do now? So I started out editing. Basically, people give me a whole manuscript. I'll take a month to read it. I usually do one. I usually I don't want to do more than one a month because it's a lot of work, and I'm doing other projects simultaneously. So I do about one a month. I got 1 or 2 lined up through November right now. I usually got 2 or 3 lined up. But I also do book coaching. So someone comes up with a concept and it's like, hey, I need some help outlining my book. And so I'll help them outline it, make sure they got, it's a compelling plot, that it has, these obligatory scenes like the face off between the hero and the villain if it's a thriller, or if it's a love story, you have like lovers meet. Inevitably you have lovers break up. Most romance books are going to have some kind of triangle, and that might not be a triangle of 3 people. It might be job and the 2 people. It might be culture and the 2 people. It might be something else, but there's a big thing preventing the other 2 from getting together, whether sometimes it is an ex-boyfriend, sometimes it's an ex-husband or something like that. So that's kind of the normal trope that's expected in the book somehow. And then they get back together. They break up somewhere in the middle, in the 75% mark, for a darn good reason, according to them. And then they overcome that, and there's a proof of love. The person who wronged the other person has to come back and prove that they're worthy of forgiveness. And that's usually how romance books work. So I'll track that. I'm like, okay, I don't know, where's this at? Where's this part at? And they're like, I don't have that in there. I don't like those when I read them in the romance books. This is a new romance book. I was like, okay, well, the people that love romance books, the reason they read so many of them is they like that trope, and they like a meet cute, or they like, the romance people to get back together. And if you're making a conscious choice to do that, just realize that maybe it's not as marketable as you might want it to be. So those are the things I look at for the developmental edits. And the book coach, in the outlines, I'll also look at that in their outline and make sure that they're making conscious choices. Like if you choose not to put this thing that most like people expect to see in this kind of book, then you have to realize that you might not make those people happy. And inevitably, as an author, you're writing the book for the reader. You're not writing it for yourself. You're writing it so the readers enjoy the book. Yeah, especially if you want to sell it. And then I also do ghostwriting. I was helping this guy outline a book, and it was a pretty dang good outline. It was that one right there. It's called The Wise Investor. It was a fiction book. He was a real estate investor. He bought rental real estate, and he had a company that helped people find rental real estate around the United States and find management companies for it, stuff like that. And he wanted to write a parable about a family that, was making 120 a year, two car loans, a mortgage. He wasn't working 9 to 5. He was working 7 to 7. He's usually working on the weekend too. He's in the rat race. And how does that person get into rental real estate, start making passive income, slowly get out of the rat race, and then be able to spend time with the people he loves, doing the things he loves? Okay, so that was the theme behind this book he wanted to write. So we spent about a month and a half outlining it with all the little elements I just talked about. And at the end, I said, "That's a pretty dang good book. I think it'll be great if you want me to edit it. And when you're finished with it, I'd be glad to edit it." And he's like, "Actually, I was going to have someone ghostwrite it because I am a rich guy and I don't have time to do it, and I'm busy." He's like, "But I really like working with you. Would you like to ghostwrite it?" And I said, "I'll tell you what. I will write you a chapter if you like it. I'll write it." So I wrote the first. So I just started working with my partner Laura. So my partner Laura, we started work. I just trained her. We'd done one client together. She's the. I don't think we've talked about this on the call yet. So my partner is my daughter from my third marriage, my stepdaughter from my third marriage, right? And so we just give a really good perspective, right? Good female, male perspective, good military, non-military perspective on all our clients. So I said, "Hey, I got this new gig." Basically, I get all the gigs. People call me because of the military. You ask me if people, I got that gig because Scott Mann was in 7th Group. We knew the same guy, and he introduced us. Probably about 60% of my clients are military through the grapevine, or they type in military editor in the Google and they find me. Obviously this guy wasn't military. So I said, "I got this new guy. We're going to ghostwrite his book. Are you in?" She's like, "Yeah." "What am I going to do? Who's going to ghostwrite it?" I was like, "Well, that's what we're going to figure out. You write the first chapter. Here's the outline. I'll write the first chapter in my way. We'll give them both. We won't tell them who wrote which. And him and his wife will choose which one they like best. That person will write the whole book to preserve continuity of the tone and flow. And whoever's not writing will edit. So if you're writing, you'll write the chapter, you give it to me, I'll edit it, and then we'll submit it to them. And we'll write 2 chapters a week." So we both turned it in, and he liked mine. Well, they liked both of them, but they liked the tone of mine better. It was more of the tone they were looking for, which is probably unfair because I did the outline, so I kind of knew what they were looking for. And so I wrote the whole book. I wrote it in 3 months. She edited. We turned 2 chapters in a week, and then we finished it. He got a contract with Rich Dad Poor Dad, Kawasaki, I think his last name is Rich Kawasaki. So he has his own publishing company of finance books. So he pitched it to them. They picked it up and published it, and it was an Amazon bestseller, number of different categories, and did really good. So that was the first ghostwriting gig I took. The second one I took was Scott's, uh, which I already had some experience doing the ghostwriting thing, and I didn't start ghostwriting that till the end, parts of it, and then I started ghostwriting for um, military, like Vietnam veterans and stuff. I did a this guy right here. He was a Sky Raider in Vietnam, did 200 combat missions in an A1, and he found me, and I wrote his book, and that was, and then it just went on. I've been writing a lot of memoirs for pilots, a lot of pilot memoirs. Um, so, but yeah, so that's, I mean, those are the three things I do. I'll if I'm doing a ghostwriting gig, I'm interviewing whoever wants me to ghostwrite their book. I'll do 10, 15, 20 hours of interviews, and then I'll put the book together and I'll send them the outline, some example, make sure the tone's right, and then I'll knock out the book in a month or two.
So let me learn something here. So I imagine people come to you with a torn off sheet of paper, sometimes with a couple notes scribbled on it, and then they'll come to you with a completely finished product that they've been carrying around. And is that the full, like, where does the most amount of, or the mean or median amount of work that gets done get handed to you as?
So yeah, so since I do 3 services, I get all 3. So first service is I get a whole draft. And the draft could have been edited multiple times by the author or other people, or it could never have been looked at by human eyes other than the author. But the first one I did with the Time Rangers, she had worked on it for 10 years and never showed it to anyone. And when I got
God,
it,
that's gotta be something. You gotta be.
got to be
Oh,
really, you're kind of walking on broken glass because you're like, look, the first half of the book's got to go. It doesn't belong in this book. She's like, what? I was like, and you have too many characters. Like this character and this character are doing the same thing. There's no reason to have both of them. And and so I'm going through kind of problems. I was like, the concept is awesome, and I gave her some ideas, and I wrote like a 30-page report on it, how she could restart. And 3 months later, she's like, here's my second draft. And I read it. I was like, this is Krista. This is freaking awesome. And here's my notes. I gave her 20 pages of notes, and she rewrote it and gave it back to me. It was like, here's my third draft. And I was like, I thought, why don't you send it to a publisher? It's like, I want it to be perfect. I was like, it's never going to be perfect, Krista. Every time you pay me, I'm going to give you notes. That doesn't mean it's not great, and it doesn't mean it's not good enough to publish, because the publisher is going to do another edit when they get a hold of it. And she's like, well, why don't you look at it? So I looked at it. I gave her some big discounts. I already knew the story. I already knew what she was going to change. So I was a lot faster every time I did it. I think I did like 6 edits. And on the 6th one, I said, I'm going to do this one for free, but I'm never going to look at it again. Go to a publisher and publish it. And she did. And she got published. And then she wrote a trilogy. So this is the first one. This is the second one. And the third one is coming out this year. So that's what I started with for the first 2 years, and that's what I still do on a consistent basis. I do one a month, and I learn something from the authors every time. I'm like, oh, that doesn't work, or oh, that's really neat. I should make a note of that so I can recommend it to other authors, or that's a neat technique. And then the second one is book coaching, where scratch paper, bunch of stuff. Sometimes it's all in Excel, which my partner hates. She doesn't even understand little squares. So I'll have to look at it and translate it for her. Sometimes it's like 4 pages of Microsoft Word that is just, not connected events that, what's going on, who's the hero, I don't even know. Sometimes it's really well thought out, theme, plot, characters, and so it's kind of a 50-50 really. Some people have really been reading books, doubling up on all their writing craft, taking some courses, and they're doing awesome. Some people went to chat GPT and said, I'm going to write a sci-fi movie about Time Rangers, can you give me some ideas? And it went and then they gave me that, and I said, this is AI, what did you want to do? And she's like, I want to do that. I was like, this is like super vague, man. This says nothing. What's your book about? Who's your hero? Well, he says that's his hero. I was like, yeah, but he doesn't fight the bad guy in the end. So how can he be the hero? Well, this is what ChatGPT. So I get in ChatGPT arguments sometimes with these guys, because ChatGPT is not that smart yet, but it might be someday. And uh, that's when they book coach. When I book coach, I'm like, all right, let's talk about the theme. Let's talk about what is this book about, because not all books, like Jack Reacher, James Bond, they're pretty on the surface, like, hey, I gotta save the world. There's gonna be a bunch of people in my way, and there's gonna be a couple of beautiful girls, and then I'll save the world. And it's pretty straightforward. And those kind of characters are flat, what we call flat character arcs. James Bond at the beginning and at the end of the movie, he doesn't change. He changes other people around him, but he doesn't change his idea of what he thinks is right or what is his morals or anything like that. His like queen and country, and that's it, right? But you'll other books will have a character arc where they start somewhere and at the end they learn something on their journey through the book, and they're changed at the end. You can use, if you want to use Lord of the Rings, you can look at Frodo at the beginning and Frodo at the end, right? Very big obvious changes, right? So I try to help them understand that hey, what kind of character are we talking about? Is it going to be flat, or is it going to be positive or negative arc, or what it where is the character at the beginning of the book and where is he at the end? And if he's exactly the same, he's got a flat arc, that's fine. But who's changing around him? Whose ideas are and morals and how are they changing? How's he changing the world? And and then they never thought about it like that. Also, depending on how highbrow you want to make your book, like the best selling books, like, I don't know if you've heard of Fourth Wing, which is the runaway fan of romantasy bestseller out there right now. Um,
Yes, I have. I
but
have.
these books, right? That author, Rebecca Yarros, is a military spouse. She started out writing military romance books about. I read one the other day, was about a single mother who was dating an SF guy, and her brother was an SF guy, and they were on the same team, and his brother died. It was a good book. It was a good book. It's like a Dear John kind of book. And so she wrote a bunch of those and was pretty successful, sold a lot of copies. And then, but she took 3 months to plan Fourth Wing and 3 months to write it. But she is an experienced writer. She wrote numerous well-selling books before this, and she understands how a plot works and how everything gets integrated and things like that. First-time authors don't understand that, and that's why they talk to me, so I can help them understand how to integrate all these pieces and how to get a character arc in there if that's what they want. And a lot of times you want to think about a book like when you think of your theme, you want to think about, okay, what's this book about? And most time for military people like you and I, it's about the rules in the military, right? So when is it a good time to follow the rules, to follow SOPs, to abide by commands? Okay, when people are new in the military, when people are new to a new situation, the SOPs are made so that people who have done this before can teach you how to do stuff and react to dangerous situations quickly. Okay. They need to be changed over time because the bad guys change over time, but that's what the SOPs are for. When you have a commander giving you commands, it's usually because he has advisors, his first sergeant, sergeant major, whatever, and they've thought things out, and they've made an order that takes in consideration accomplishment of the mission and safety of the men, ideally, right? And when you're new to working with these guys, you have to kind of assume some of this stuff. So when is it a good time to follow orders? When is it a good time to follow SOPs? When is it a good time to all this stuff, it's probably when you're new, when you're not, you haven't spent 20 years doing the job, you don't really know exactly what you're doing, you don't know the area as well as other people. That's probably a good time to follow the rules. When is it a good? What are the consequences of following the rules and not following the rules? Well, if you follow the pros and cons of following the rules, okay, are, hey, you're doing what you're told. You're probably less liable. If you do what you're told, you probably won't be, thrown in jail if something bad happens, if people die under your watch, if innocents get killed because you followed the commander's orders, you followed the SOPs, you followed the rules of engagement, and therefore you're protected, ideally, okay, for the most part, okay. The bad thing is you may be ordered to do something, or the plan or the SOP may result in someone dying under your watch because it didn't react to the new enemy, SOPs. You may kill innocents because you were either ordered to, or they're a result of what happened. So that's what following the rules looks like. What is not following the rules like? When is it a good time not to follow the rules? Okay, well, you know more than the people telling you what to do because you're on the ground and you've been here before and they haven't, maybe, which happens a lot. So then you decide that the safety of my troops is my responsibility, so I'm going to do something different than what they say. For instance, if they say, hey, you know what, statistics say that most people get killed on night ops, so we're not going to do night ops anymore. Well, for my thing is, the reason statistics say most people get killed on night ops is because we mostly did night ops because we had night vision for a long period of time. And now you're telling me that we all got killed at night because no one was traveling during the day, but you didn't include those in your statistics. That's moronic, in my opinion. I want to see the statistics. It's like, well, this is what the statistics say. I was like, well, that's dumb, and I'm not going to do that. But I might report that I'm going out during the day, but I might be going at night. So you make the decisions. What are the consequences? What are the pros and cons? Pros are, maybe because you have more experience and you think you know more, your people are safer. Maybe because you're doing something different than what you were told to do or what is in the book to do, you don't kill innocents and you capture more bad guys. Okay. What are the cons? Even if it goes right for you, even if everything happens the way you thought it was and you get caught disobeying, you could get prosecuted for it because you disobeyed the rules. For sure, if everything goes wrong, you probably will get punished for it because you didn't obey the rules. Okay. So those are the two sides of the equation. Now, if that's what the theme of your book is about, then you need to encompass all the different elements and the phases of that. So there's people that are always going to follow the rules, and there's people that are always going to break the rules. And your hero's probably leaning one side or the other, but he's probably in the middle because there's a time to follow them and a time to break them. And so and this is what I experience mostly with the military guys who want to write books, is they have things in there where it's a gray area and they slide into the rules and they break the rules, but they justify it and then they follow the rules. And what they don't do is they don't put other examples, sub characters in there. In real life, it's harder, obviously, if it's a memoir or something, but in fiction, you look at Harry Potter and you look at all the different characters in Harry Potter, and you got people that follow the rules. You got Neville who follow the rules. You got Malfoy who, didn't follow the rules. And you had, Harry Potter that sometimes did and sometimes didn't. And you had all these different things. That's not what that book was about, but you had those examples of all the different people that were following the magic rules and not. In military, you also need to show what people are doing and the results. Like if you follow the rules all the time, things still go wrong. If you don't follow the rules all the time, things go wrong. Sometimes things go right. If you're in the middle, maybe you're getting more positive than negative, but you can still be punished when you're not following the rules. You have to show all those different elements so that when you get to the end of the book, the reader understands what you're trying to say, whatever that is. What are you trying to say? That sometimes not following the rules is the right thing to do, which is, in my experience, a lot of military people are trying to say that. And they're trying to define that. So you take that to any theme of any best-selling book, or uh, uh, you can look at it and you can see what were they trying to tell me. And that's what I try to do as a ghostwriter. I'll interview the people and say, what are you trying to tell your reader? Especially nonfiction, right? What misconception does your, and not memoirs, sometimes memoirs, but in the general nonfiction are like, what misconception about the world are you trying to tell your reader at the beginning of the book? Or where when your reader picks up the book, what does he think wrong about the world that you're going to correct? And then you tell him in the beginning, you're like, you may think, Malcolm Gladwell's really good at this, right? You may think that, the little guy always loses, or the one, when the little guy wins, it's like a miracle and it's an exception to the rule. But I'm here to tell you that David had an advantage over Goliath, and he won because he cheated. And that's really kind of the history of the world, of the little guys. Always the little guys that overcome aren't really playing by the rules. So that's his, I think, David and Goliath book. So that he's going to tell you that right up front. This is what you think. This is what I'm going to prove. And then he tells you stories, and he goes through statistics, and he walks you through all the examples that he has in there, until at the end you kind of say, yeah, he was right. The little guys cheated. The little guys that did win, they cheated. And so that's what you have to do when you write a nonfiction book. You have to say, okay, when people pick up this book, what do they believe that's wrong? What am I going to teach them that's different? You have to present that in the beginning, because they're going to read the introduction and go, that's an interesting premise. I'm not sure I believe it, but I'm going to read the book to find out. And then you have to have, all your proof and all your stories to prove that, until you get to the end and change their mind. You have to do the same thing with fiction. What's your theme? What are you trying to show the reader about morals and ethics, and what to do and what that is? Is this a positive or a negative book? Are we trying to prove that this is what you do, or this is not what you do? And then how do you bring the reader through that, through all the characters and the plot? And then when you write a memoir, you can write a memoir that's just your life, right? Will it sell? If you're not famous, probably not. I mean, Schwarzkopf wrote a book a year after Desert Storm. It was a national bestseller. Schwarzkopf was the general of the army in the first war we'd had since Vietnam, really. And so everyone wanted to know what he was thinking when we fought that war, right? I had a gentleman, another general. He was a 3-star general of the 82nd, and in Just Cause and Desert Storm, all right? And he wrote this memoir, and him and his son, who's a colonel, this is called Static Line, and the author's called James Johnson. They're both called James Johnson Jr. And he wrote his memoir, and he wanted to publish it 25 years after Desert Storm, after the GWAT. And I told him, I read your book. I usually don't read the whole book. I usually read 3 or 4 chapters, but I know who you are, and I wanted to give you a benefit of the doubt. So I read your book, and it's very well written, and it's your memoir about your life, your whole life, and it's a history book, because you haven't written who do you think this book's for? He's like, it's for everybody. It's like, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, because what do you think everybody's going to get out of this book? He's like, well, there's leadership, and there's, examples of, this and that. I was like, so what is Private Snuffy going to get out of this book? Well, it's probably not for Private Snuffy. I was like, all right, so it's not for everybody. What's Sergeant Smith going to get out of this book? It's like, well, chapter 7 talks about, okay, so Sergeant Smith's not going to buy a $30 book to get through chapters 1 through 6 that have nothing to do about him, because it's about your time in West Point, and it's about your time as a lieutenant in whatever, the A2nd or whatever, and going to Ranger School, and then being a commander in Vietnam. Has nothing to do with Sergeant Smith. But in chapter 7, he's not going to make it to chapter 7. Well, maybe it's not for Sergeant Smith. Right. Are any generals going to read your book? Do you think they are going to read your book and have anything to learn from it? because you weren't in GWAT. You got out in 91, and the world's changed. Wars changed. And this is a good history book on what we did before. But there's other history books written by people like Schwarzkopf who had higher rank and more battle planning experience. He's like, well, the generals probably won't read it. It's like, okay, you think colonels, aspiring generals, are going to read it? Probably not. I was like, okay, who are you writing it? Till we get down. So who is the book for, right? Ideally, you can identify one single person who this is for, you know, and if you write the book for a single demographic, not people like history and people like the army and people like engineering and people like, Panama and people like, Iraq. All those people are going to love it. You identify your your biggest fan. Ideally, the best way to do this is say, if your biggest fan read this book, what would the letter he wrote you be? What would he say about this book that he loves about this book? That's your ideal reader. That's your biggest fan. That's the guy that's going to say, hey, you know what? I remember, I hear what you're saying, and I read this book, and this has a chapter on that, and it's freaking fantastic, and it's great, and you should read it. That's your biggest fan. You're writing every chapter for that guy. Okay. That guy is every chapter that guy reads, he's going to go, this is a great chapter. I can't wait to read the next one. You have to figure out who that guy is. And there's got to be a guy like that, because if you're not writing it for a specific person, the other people who it's not written for are going to get bored and put it down when they're writing chapters that weren't written for them. But they might read the whole thing if their buddy said it was fantastic. Now, who was Harry Potter written for, Nick?
Children.
Girls and boys?
Boys.
Well, how old?
11 to 13.
Right. So that was written for a boy, but who loves it? Everybody loves it, right? Girls, boys.
Yeah, everybody.
Girls, boys, adults, teenagers, everyone loves it. All right. But it was written specifically for 11 to 13-year-old boys. Okay. And every single thing that it goes on there is what boys love. They like to get into mischief. They're, especially 11 to 13-year-old boys, they're kind of like, girls are icky, It's not written for, because if it was written for girls, it would be, there would be a different point of view in this whole thing, right? It was about the relationships between the guys and the girls and the dances and everything like that. But instead, it's like, I don't know why she's so mad at me, and all this stuff. So it's written for the boys, and then it's got pieces for everybody else. But the boys are the ones that it was written for, that it took off from. My wife loves them. Obviously, and she still loves them. And she's not an 11, 13-year-old boy or girl. She's a 35-year-old girl. So that you always have to figure that when you're writing a book, you have to figure out who that one person that loves every bit of your book. And the best way to do that is for them to write a letter as if you're that guy and tell me what you loved about my book. Every chapter. Tell me about every chapter, what you liked about it. What did you like about this chapter? What did you like about this chapter? And figure out who that guy is, so you can write that book for that person. And it's fantastic for that person. He's going to be out there like parading it, buying extra copies, handing them to his buddies. And that's how you make a bestseller.
Sounds simple, but I mean, I can't. I feel bad. My guest, I can't read. My capacity to read has diminished so much, whether it's from lack of trying or concussions. My eyes jump around and I go, I don't want to do this anymore, and I just stop. I go to audiobooks and I'm like, I got other stuff to do. So it's tough to even get people to intake the information that you're putting out to them. So as we said before we started, there's the way this goes, and where's that look like in the future, right? You got something you want to put out in your marketing or your reading, or maybe this is it. You talk interactive of reading stories and talking short. Everything gets shorter and shorter. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go that direction with writing. I'm not creative in that way, but I know a lot of people are, and it's interesting. They've got to reach out to you, and that must be disheartening though for you to go, well, it's a good story, but I think you're only going to sell 2 copies. You're going to buy one, and then the library or the bookshop is going to buy the other one to sell, and that's going to
That's
be it.
that's not how I pitch it, right? I'm like,
Yeah, no.
you wrote a really good book. It's very well written. It's easy to understand. It's chronologically in order. All the details are here, but you're not writing. So what I call it, there's no blood on the page, right? You can't write a book about you who went to Vietnam, and before you went to Vietnam as a second or first lieutenant, you went to ranger school, and for ranger school, you wrote a paragraph that said ranger school is great. I wish I could go again. That's like the paragraph. That's the ranger school paragraph. And I'm like, and this is the example I gave him. I was like, that's baloney. That no one says that about ranger school. And even if you did, I wouldn't put it in this book. And then and
Rob,
then and then
yeah,
you go to
Robert
Vietnam,
Garnsey back there wrote a whole novel on it.
right? And then you go to Vietnam, and you never talk about what you learned in ranger school if you applied it to Vietnam and it sucked, or was it great, or was it the best training you ever had? And if you wouldn't have survived with Vietnam without it, because that's what I, as a 18 Bravo Ranger, Green Beret, that's what I want to know is, was Ranger School useful in Vietnam? Because that's what we were learning in Ranger School. And you didn't even address it because you didn't go into your thought process about what was I prepared for this? But you wrote a whole chapter on airborne school, a 3-week school that we use as a recruitment, uh, you know, uh, gift to most people nowadays. Everyone goes, anyone can go through. There's no standards. Do you have to do push-ups, or do you have to do like 45-degree bar ups or whatever? Why are the women do something different if you have to do pull-ups to go to air parachute school? You don't remember this, but when I went in the 80s, we had to do, you couldn't go to the next phase unless you could do 6 pull-ups. Okay. But the women, they just introduced women in it, and women didn't have to do pull-ups. They had to do the 45 pull. I was like, why are we doing pull-ups? And the women, if you don't need to do pull-ups to pull a parachute thing, because you don't even do it to get the dash ones now, I think. I don't know if they do the T10s. But if you don't have to pull your riser in the T10 anymore, which is why you had to do the pull-ups, that was the defense, then why are we all required to do 6 pull-ups? Not that I couldn't do 6 pull-ups. I'm just saying that the whole thing doesn't make any sense. My son went to airborne school like 2 years ago.
I don't even really remember airborne school at all. I know it was hot, and I remember it was stupid. That's really about the only things I remember. So it's got to be satisfying to help people to tell their stories and guide them. And it seems like you're getting better and better and better at all this. But like, what started all the process? Because now we're living, just chilling out, kind of getting into your schedule. But why did you make the choice to start down this whole path in the first place? Was it a RIP contract to begin with? And what made you make that decision way back when, at the beginning?
Yeah, you're going way back. So, well, I grew up in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, I graduated high school in 86. I went to college for a year. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to join the military. My dad convinced me that I should go to college. My dad was in a fraternity. My dad used to say his fraternity was like Animal House. They actually had a Coke machine that put out beers. They replaced it all. They owned a Coke machine and they put beers in it, and then they'd hit it. They do all kinds of stuff. He had all these stories, and he loved college. He thought I'd love college too. I hated college. I went there for a year. I had pretty good grades coming out of high school. I did very, very, I think I had a 1.7 or something coming out of college the first year. And, and then I went and worked for the summer for my uncle. My uncle had a catering business. I worked in Ohio on the river, on a riverboat, serving food. And I went to the Marines MEPS. I went to the Marine recruiter, and I took the ASVAB there. And he's like, you can do anything you want in the Marines. I had a friend in college. His brother was a Marine Recon. And so I was thinking about, because he had all these great stories, I was thinking about the Marines. And one of my friends from college was like, "Hey, I think you should go in the Army, because if you go in the Army, go in the Rangers," because he was in ROTC, so he knew what the Rangers were. He's like, "Go in the Rangers, because in the Army, if you don't like what you're doing, you can change to some other profession. There's a lot more options in the Army than there is the Marines." And I said, "Well, okay, that makes sense." So I went to the recruiter, and he was like, I was thinking about being a Ranger. And he's like, "Well, let me show you some of these videotapes." So he shows me a bunch of, all the jobs that they need to fill. Like, you could be,
Gets the VHS player out.
yeah, yeah, he gets a VHS player, and he's got, I think it's a radio wire laying MOS. You can lay wire along the ground, and it's got this guy like spinning with the spool. You can lay it above the ground, and you're climbing the trees and hanging them on the branches. Or you can do it above the ground. They're digging ditches. And I'm like, yeah, that does not. I can't believe someone made a video about that to, to 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 convince somebody to do it. But that's not something I'm interested in. I want to see the Ranger video, and it's the Ranger video's got him like doing. It's basically the stripes, like, obstacle courses and everything. I was like, that's what I'm really interested in. My father said, my father was upset, but I tried the year of college like he asked, and I didn't like it. And he said, "Well, get a job." He was when he was to Vietnam, he was a generator repairman, and when whatever they taught him in there, he was awesome. He like I used to live in Iran, and we bought a used Jeep, and he basically rebuilt the engine there. I don't know if that's all from his generator repairman MOS, but I mean, he was really good with all kinds of stuff, electrical stuff for sure. And so I went there, and he's like, "Make sure you get a job you can use in the outside world. Otherwise, is why bother?" And I said, "Okay." So I go there, and I was like, "I want to be a Ranger." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I got to get something I can use. Are there any like combat engineers in the Rangers?" He's like, "No." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll just be a Ranger then." And then I get home, and he's like, "What'd you get?" I was like, "I'm going to be a Ranger." He's like, "You're just going to be infantry. That's stupid." And so I went into the Army with kind of that on my shoulder, when my dad wasn't super excited about my choices. So that's how I got a Ranger contract, but there was no bonuses back then in the 80s. There was no bonuses. There wasn't any bonuses to get anywhere in the Army, as far as I knew. There was no extra pay to be in the Rangers or the Green Berets. There was no, I mean, when you came in, they probably had demo pay and special forces pay and whatever. But when I came in, there was nothing like that. In fact, I remember going, when I went to ANOC in the 97, the sergeant major of like USAFIC and USASOC came to the graduation. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have this special pay for for Green Berets. Everyone will get so much money." And the whole room laughed at him. He was so mad. I think it was Rambo. His last name. Do you know Sergeant Major Rambo? I think it was Sergeant Major Rambo. But the whole room laughed at him because we'd heard it for so many years, and no one believed him. And like, sure enough, like the next year or the year after, we got it. But it was a rumor for so many years that, he's like, "Don't, why are you laughing? I fought for this." And we're like, whatever. We never seen it. It's like the biggest rumor in SF ever. But yeah, there was no special pays. We got 110 for jump pay, and that was it. And so, yeah, so I was in the Rangers. I jumped into Panama, spent 4 years in the Rangers. I know you were talking to Kevin Key about moving from the Rangers to the Green Berets. So as soon as I went to SFAS, or actually, as soon as I made it known that I applied to SFAS, I went from an infantry platoon to the MBC room.
A
And
just punishment for a
yeah,
defector.
yeah, and I just graduated PLDC as honor grad. That was what they called the warrior leadership course back then. And so I just finished PLDC. I was the honor grad there. I'd come back to my platoon, and they'd already discussed it. And they're like, "We're going to move you to the embassy room." I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" So I was a Ranger qualified, combat, CIB, you know, PLDC, honor grad, NBC guy. So they sent me to NBC school. I was honor grad at NBC school. I come back. I run the company mask room with all the masks and like the chemical detectors. I have to like PMC has the chemical detectors like once a month, and the radiac meters or whatever. And so I just brought out the dash 10s and went through them once a month. And then I got everyone to wash their masks once a month. And that's all I did for 6 months. And then I worked out like a madman getting ready for a thing. But I didn't know anything about, I mean, I was an undergrad, but the undergrad stuff tested me on like, what's the maximum safe distance everyone needs to be away from a nuclear bomb, radiation spread and everything. So I was good with
The
math.
important things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
calculation and stuff. But I remember I had these big industrial fans. You had those huge freaking fans because it was so hot and bending and there's no air conditioning in this stupid building. And I was in the basement and some guy brought a pellet. It was one of those pellets that they burn to get the chem smoke for the chem rooms to test your mask and stuff. But I never seen it one like that before because I'd seen it in a different form. He's like, hey, these are in my mask. Do you know what they are? And I looked at him, I was like, I don't know. Let's open it up. So I opened it up, and the industrial fan blew it through the company, the 3 stories of the company building. And everyone's like coughing and their eyes are watering. And they're like, what's going on? And I was like, oops, sorry. But I had no idea what I was doing at the NBC room. Yeah, so I went to SFAS and I finished. I got 18 Delta. I went to the last San Antonio course, and then I went to the team. I failed the first time I went through. Went to the Bravo course. I was a Bravo for 2 years. Went back to the medic course to the last Fort Sam course in San Antonio, and then I graduated a second time.
I had that. Yeah, I was looking at your thing. I was like Bravo and Delta. But what was RIP like back in the 80s? Because
My God.
everything's different now, and I used to eat, and it's a
So
big
it was
thing.
only
But
3 weeks. It was only 3 weeks. I
only
remember.
3 weeks.
Yeah, but it was 3 weeks of. There was the worst. They kept the worst of the 3 weeks. Now it's like 7 or 8 weeks, but they actually teach you stuff now. Like there's no training. They did teach us some land nav because they wanted to smoke us out in the land nav course, but the they met us up at airborne school. We threw our bags in the pickup truck and they made us run to RIP from airborne school in our boots and everything. So we ran to RIP, and it was just 3 weeks of, do you really want to be here? It was like that. It was just, you could call it assessment and selection, but it was just smoke your balls off until someone quits. Obstacle course 2 or 3 times a day. Everyone close your eyes and get in the friendly and rest position until at least 3 people quit. Road marches, sometimes twice a day, up and down cardiac hill, buddy carries. Just, that's all I remember. All I remember is getting smoked every day. I don't remember learning one thing except we did get a map course before we went out to the land nav course. But other than that, that was it. It was a smoke fest. It was there, and there was a high attrition rate. I think that I don't know what. Go ahead.
What was the cadre made up of? I mean, because the senior guys,
It was
Vietnam.
sixes, if I remember. Oh, no, there's an E6 and a 5, so it was just a couple sergeants that were detached to it.
Okay.
I actually I remember the name of my tax. I don't remember any of I barely remember my squad leaders in the Ranger Battalion right now, but I remember the tax that smoked the crap out of me in RIP for those 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back in the day, things were different. The stuff they did that back then, you can't get away with some of those things now. But it's interesting to hear like how rough. Everybody had it hard.
Yeah, just getting a Ranger Battalion. Like every day was a Ranger day, right? Every day was run as fast as you can, and if you fall out, then you're a piece of turd. Do push-ups till I get tired. What I remember, this new guy got to the team, and a couple months after I got there, and they're like, "Hey, hey, you look pretty squared away. What school do you want to go to?" He's like, "I want to go to free fall." "Oh, you want to go to free fall? Yeah, we should get some training for that." And the next thing he knows, every single moment of free time was spent on his stomach on a chair in the arch position to prepare for free fall that he was never going to get, because back
Never
then
gonna go
you
to.
didn't even get free fall positions. So unless you were an FO. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, just, it was just every day was a smoke.
How long after you got there did you jump into Panama?
So I got there in March of '88. At the time, we were out where Ranger School is now, out in the old World War II part of the fort, where they can't hear you scream. That's where the unit was, and it was like so far from main post, like there's nothing out there, and it was there was a bus that went like once or twice a day to main post, uh, old basic training bus, and we were there for about 6 months, and then we moved to main post, and the commander was like, we're gonna road march to our new we're gonna road march to our new barracks. And so it was like 30 miles or something, so we road marched back to main post. But I went in June of, I want to say June of '89. Yeah. Yeah, it was June of 80. No, I went, I think I went April or March of '89, but I got recycled twice, once during a cycle break, and I was there for 6 months. And I got out, and then I did the EIB, and I got my EIB. And just after we got EIB, we got alerted on like the 18th of December to jump in on the 20th.
What was that like? Because Rangers high stress, and there's this looming threat of imminent danger or death at all times, and then they go, "All right, guess what, guys? All that shit we've been fucking smoking the shit out of you for, we got to go do that now."
I don't, I didn't really think about it that way. I don't think many of us did. We were excited, I think would be I got a funny story about this too. So, I was a private. I was a PFC with a tab at the time. I haven't been promoted to specialist, and
Times were
I
different back then.
I the I just so how let me how do I phrase this? So we got alerted on like 2 or 3 days beforehand. What back then we all had to call in. If we left, if we were in the barracks, we called in every hour. So if you're watching a movie, you had to get up halfway through the movie and go call in, say, "Hey, did we get alerted?" And if you were home with your family and you left your house to go shopping with your family, you're supposed to call in every hour, unless you had a beeper. We didn't have cell phones back then, so a few people had beepers and paid for beepers. Um, I was pretty much a barracks rat. I didn't have a car or anything, so I was there when we got alerted. Someone had bought a keg, and they were in there. It was in the hallway, and everyone was drinking out of the keg. Of course, the people who were married who lived off post came in, and some of those guys did, like my squad leader didn't even stop off and buy anything for us. Like he stopped by and bought like 5 cases of cigarettes for him because he was a smoker. But we had smokers and dippers on the team. I wasn't one of them, but they didn't have anything because they weren't allowed to leave once we got alerted. So we didn't get jack shit. So there was some bitterness there. But we got alerted. We had, believe it or not, this this had been planned for over a year. We had been literally doing rehearsals on objectives exactly that looked like exactly what we jumped in on for a year. We just didn't know that's what it was for. Uh, and in conjunction with other units and with the aircraft that we were going to use and everything, we jumped in. They had, I think we jumped into Eglin. They had cut out a whole, made a whole, rehearsal buildings and stuff like that. So we've been doing this for a while, and so we always had our bags packed with a certain packing list and everything. So wasn't really much there. Basically, someone already had a plan. There was already a, I don't know who made the terrain model, but it was professional and it was done in a day. I don't know if it was done beforehand. It was shipped from DC or what. And I was just a private, and I didn't even know where Panama was. And everybody was saying that the bad guys were called the LBGs, which I thought was the name of the whatever the army we were fighting, but it was actually a racial slur. It was little brown guys, but but that's all I knew. They were like, "Oh, I gotta get those LBGs, and they're gonna be here and here." And I was like, "Okay, the LBGs got it." But I mean, I was getting briefed on all this stuff, and I kind of knew what was going on, but I was like, "Okay, well, I'm ready to go." And so I'm a PFC with a tab, and my platoon sergeant's like, "Hey, you're going to be my driver. I want a Ranger tab guy to be my driver." And I was like, well, so we had Jeeps back then, and the Jeeps were manual. I never drove a manual before, but he wouldn't let me tell him that. And I was like, "Hey," he's like, "Shut up and go get the Jeep." I was like, "Roger that." So of course I barely started. I'm figuring it out as I'm going, and I keep, it keeps kicking out. I finally get it over there, and we're ready to do a rehearsal, and he jumps in and he's like, "Let's go." And I'm like, and he's like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "I got to tell you, I don't know I've never driven a manual before. Get the fuck out of my Jeep." He's like, uh, you know how to drive a Jeep? Or you know how to drive a manual stick?" He's like, "Yep." He's like, "You're my new driver." So that's the only reason I jumped in, because otherwise I would have been driving the Jeep off the back of the planes when they landed. So then because of that, I wasn't in, they'd already done the sticks. So they stuck me as I wasn't even with my squad anymore. I was in the back of the plane, like the last guy out. The guy in front of me was the chaplain's assistant. So when I jumped in, uh, there was bullets coming through the plane, and when you jumped out, you could see all the tracers and stuff. And I hit a flagpole and I broke my leg. And I didn't. I knew I hit something, but I didn't know I broke my leg. And so when I hit the ground, I was like, "God damn, that freaking hurts." And I was the last one, and I put my ruck on. I stood on my leg, and I was like, "Ah, this fucking hurts like." And I started walking, and I had to walk over this little ditch, and I had to put more weight, because I had to, put my whole weight on the thing instead of limping. And my tib fib completely broke when I hit the other side, because it was, I guess, hanging on by pieces what before that. And then I buried my ruck, and I had a saw, and I crawled. I don't know. I crawled for like 6 hours. I must at least a couple miles. I crawled to the assembly point, and there's people running around. I mean, there was Panamanian soldiers, and I just stopped crawling because it was pretty loud to crawl with the saw. It's kind of like ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. So anytime I'd hear someone coming by, I just kind of stay silent and stay down, because I was in the prone the whole time anyway. So I crawled for like 6 hours. I finally got a hold of a ranger that was late to the assembly point, and I told them to send help. So they sent a Hummer down, or a Jeep down, and they took me to the aid station. And that place was chaos. So they said, "What's wrong?" Is like, I think I got a broken leg. Can you just give me some splint stuff? I'll splint my leg. So I did an LNU on my leg, and then they evacuated me out that night
To the States?
back to the States. So I get to San Antonio and I get checked in, uh, and the place is crowded, really crowded, because 82nd jumped in after us and they had a bunch of injuries as well. And then I called my dad that night, and they were supposed to go to for Christmas because it was the 21st now, 20th. I guess it's the 20th night of the 20th. They were supposed to go to England the next day for Christmas. They had plans, they had tickets. So I call him up. He's like, "Why are you calling so late, man?" It was like midnight. And I was like, I was in Panama this morning. He's like, "Are you all right?" He's like, "Well, I'm in the hospital in San Antonio, but I'm fine." And he's like, "Oh shit, we're gonna cancel our no, just go. You can go." So they went to England, and I stayed in the hospital and got my leg put back together.
So jumped in, broke your leg, and then right out, and then everybody else went on. But you'd already gotten shoved to the side because you didn't get to jump with your squad. So that led to you breaking your leg on a flagpole. That's crazy.
Man, I guess I wouldn't have hit the flagpole if I'd been with my squad,
Been with
maybe.
your squad, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but I might have got
That's it.
shot. There was a couple people that got shot and died, so maybe I'd be dead too.
Yeah. No, it all works out. You can't foresee any of the different futures. But you said, I think you said you got a CIB from that. Did everybody, was it a blanket CIB memo for the whole
I think
battalion?
so. Everyone, it was a combat jump. There was machine gun, rifle fire, tracers coming up. Everyone,
Yeah.
you see them, and people got shot in the plane before they even jumped out.
Mm. And now, not jumping too far, going, but what did you have told to you by that history teacher back when you sat in that class about what you went through? And you're like, that's not correct.
Well, it wasn't. I don't even remember. It wasn't about what I went through. It was just like, hey, that because afterwards, right? I read a bunch of books about the war I participated in because I figured I really wanted to learn more about what the hell is going on, and that's eventually I got a history degree, right? So I mean, I was just a kid, not interested in the world around me. I'd lived in Europe most of my life. I grew up in Iran and England and Holland, and so I knew a lot about the world, but didn't care about history, and I'd never been to anywhere south of the United States. I had no idea where all those countries were. Eventually it's kind of funny. I end up working for Seventh Group, and now I've been to every single one of those countries, and I know more about geography than the average bear for sure. I mean, I've been to half the countries in Africa, almost all the countries in Europe, number of ones in Asia and Middle East. Um, but I didn't know much about geography back then. I just felt stupid. So I started reading books about what the war is about and all everything that happened. So I felt like, I mean, to most people, Panama Just Cause is a blip on the time scale, right? Most people don't even remember it happened if you weren't alive back then. And so I think the instructor did he read the 4 paragraphs in a book somewhere about it and figured he knew what it was all about. And the whole Noriega thing is really complicated. Was he? I mean, he was a CIA, confidant at one point, right? So, what was the purpose behind our invasion? And then, were we shooting civilians? I don't, there was some times where we were supposed to block off the highway that went through the base we took. That's why we jumped on that base, and civilians decided to charge our blockades. And we didn't. The only thing we could do was to shoot their car up, and some people got hurt in the process for sure. But yeah, I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but I remember I knew more about it than he did, especially the Ecuador Peru border excursion too. So yeah, I don't remember exactly what he was talking about.
I realized from doing this show that I don't know anything about anything like history wise. Like names, and oftentimes that happened in regimental history or whatever, I'll just have the words, a couple words, that's it. And then I in my head I go, okay, where's the rest of the information, Nick? Oh, this file is empty. And like I couldn't tell you, just cause. I have a couple other stories, like the guy I worked for, um, Charlie Williams, fifth group guy. He didn't get to go because he went to selection, and his first sergeant didn't want to mess that up for him, so he didn't send him to jump in with the 82nd. And he's like, "Oh, thank you for taking care of me, but God damn it!" Like,
There were guys that were in PLDC that went AWOL so they could go. There were guys that were in Ranger School on Christmas break that went, even though they weren't supposed to because they were assigned to Ranger School, right? And then they come back with a CIB and a jump star to finish their last phase of Ranger School.
what can you imagine the cadre's face at that point, going, "What in the fuck is going on here? You little bastards!" Just
Yeah,
spoke the shit out of them.
I don't think that. I think they were treated a little bit like royalty,
I'm sure
which
they were. I'm sure they were like royalty, like because that was a big deal at the time, very
yeah,
big deal.
yeah, it was the first time since Grenada.
How'd your leg heal up?
Well, I went to SFAS a year later, so I got a cast on it for a couple months, and then I slowly built up and started running, and then I went to PLDC and got put in the embassy room, and I just trained for 6 months. And I mean, you went to SFAS, ain't that easy on your legs?
Oh, it was my feet. It was my feet. My legs were ready. My feet were not. I was a fucking idiot. I totally disregarded that part of things. But that was coming from a unit that I just didn't think of it, and nobody told me, so they weren't ready. But so I mean, everybody's got to be riding high coming off of that. With we just did something and haven't you know uh, Rangers really. There's not a lot. I mean, since Vietnam, like guys. So now everybody's got a fresh CIB. You're proud to be a Ranger. Why did you look over at SF and go, I think I'm going to go over there?
Especially in the 80s. You know, Rangers are arranged like an infantry battalion, right? So there's only so many spots, right? So if you once you get to E5, you can be a squad, you can be a team sergeant. E6, you're a squad leader. E7, you're a platoon sergeant, right? But there's only so many squads. Like all 8 people in the squad, the 2 team sergeants aren't necessarily both going to be a squad leader in the Rangers. There's not enough squads. And the 4 squad leaders aren't all going to be platoon sergeants in the Ranger battalion. There's not enough platoons. So there's a pyramid thing going on, right? And so I just looked at it logically. I mean, I made E5 in 3 years, and I was in the NBC room with my E5, but I made my E5 before I decided to go to SF, and now I'm like, okay, I'm an E5. I'm not a team. They're going to put me in charge of a team, but really, most people are making squad lead E6 in a year, because back then, if you had a Ranger tab, your 11 Bravo points were cut in half. So you made E6 fast. I made E6 in 4 years. So I'm going to be a squad leader, but am I going to be a squad leader in the Rangers, or am I going to be a squad leader down the street in the $1.97, the 197th or something like that, right? So I was just looking at, like, do I want to be not in a elite unit? I don't know what that looks like. I've never been anywhere else but the Rangers, but do I want to be in something less than the Rangers? So that's the way it was just me in my own head thinking about the future.
Did you know the difference in the two? And was it that still looked down upon like it is today? It's you're basically stabbing the Ranger commander in the heart if you're going to SFAS these days.
It was, I mean, that they did put me in the NBC room, so
Yeah,
they,
but At
I mean,
least they didn't put you on staff duty every other day and
right.
like RFS you.
Right, right. But I mean, I think it was a good thing that I went to war because how do you I did a good job. I mean, I broke my leg, but that wasn't my fault.
You
So
did it really well.
yeah, I did it really well. Um, I mean, there's a couple things. One is I came out just with all the awards that everyone else had, right? I jumped in, uh, and uh, and then no one saw me for 4 months. I was on convalescent leave. I come back. I go to war leadership course, PLDC. I come out honor grad. I'm an E5, and when I come back to the thing, I'd already kind of made my decision, and I was like, I think I want to go. I think I talked to him while I was in PLDC because I had some because I was E5 now. I had to get counseled, and I made the mistake. I don't know. He asked me, platoon sergeant asked me what I was going to do. And I was thinking, yeah, I was thinking about going to SFAS. He's like, oh, yeah, SFAS is good. So back then, I'd say, at least in my platoon, 1/3 of the platoon after the 85 would stay in the Rangers or go to Delta Force. 1/3 would go to the Green Berets and 1/3 would get out after their 4-year contract was up. That was about average. And so I wasn't, I don't know, there's only like 3 other people that went to the Q course with me at that time. But of the other, there was people that followed on the next year. So it wasn't, maybe it was frowned on, but you know, that's only because the senior enlisted and the officers are a little bit selfish, right? Because they know it's a pyramid scheme too, right? Not everyone can serve at all levels in the Rangers. They may come back, but they're going to have to leave. Where are they going to go? And so I think the Rangers were less of a feeder to CAG as they are now, because now they're a major feeder to the CAG. They're like baby CAG, right? Um, but but not back then they weren't as much. And so there's a couple people going. My platoon sergeant went 3 times and he got in the third time. So it wasn't they weren't I wasn't a guaranteed thing by any means.
Yeah. The things are obviously much different today, but some of the guys are like, yeah, as soon as you either one guy told me you're either getting RFS'd and then you go over to see the soft recruiter and say, I'm going to go to selection before I get kicked out of Ranger Regiment, or you kind of do it without telling anybody. Then you get punished when you get back. And kind of
Yeah,
how things work.
when I got back, it was quick. It was like I think 2 or 3 weeks before I was gone. I mean, I went
Get the
straight to
fuck
San
out of here.
Antonio. Yeah, I went to San Antonio.
Of course. Okay, so you said, yeah, you got that, went back Bravo, and then finished up in San Antonio, and that ended. That was in '92 or '93,
Uh,
right?
97 is when so they closed it down in 96. In December 96, they closed the 18 Delta course in San Antonio down. They were moving it, and then they had a 2-year break before they had another class up in Fort Bragg. And I had 2.5, almost 3 months of leave, and I didn't have to be anywhere because I was already tabbed, and they had changed the order of the Q course to and while we were because the 18 Delta course is so long, all of the people who weren't tabbed, instead of they hadn't gone, we used to have when I went through was phase 2 and phase 13. So there's 3 phases. Phase 2 is the academic phase. So as soon as you finished SFAS, you went to Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. You went and learned the academic stuff. And then you did SUT and Robin Sage together in Camp McCall. But then they switched it after I went through, and they added SEER school, and they met, when I went through, you got your Green Beret before you, and then you went to language school afterwards. Then they started integrating language school and trying to figure out where they were going to put it. They're going to put it like parts of it in the beginning, parts of the middle, parts of the end. And I don't know where they are now, but they also added SEER school wasn't a requirement when I went through. I'll tell you about that later. And so when I got through the the first part of the Delta course, I had 3 months off because all the non-tab guys had to go to SUT and SEER school. And so that was like 3 months of their life. They had to go sign in, do admin stuff. I also got Christmas break. They had Christmas break. They had to go sign in to brag, do admin stuff, do SEER school, do SUT, whatever. And then they're going to finish the second part of the academic up in Bragg, the GOAT lab. And I took a Mac flight to Australia for 2 months, and and I just hung out in Australia for 2 months, and then I took a Mac flight back and started the second academic phase in '97 in like March or April or something. And when I finished that, they had just decided that I just got promoted to E7 in the course at 7 years. And when I went back to my unit, I was checking in with seventh group because I was going back to seventh group, and they said, "Hey, do you want to just go to ANOC while you're in SWIC?" And I was like, "Sure." And they had decided to combine O and I, the intelligence course, with ANOC at the time, which they separated later on again. And so I went to ANOC and O and I for however long that was, like 5 months. So I'd just been in the Q course for a year and a half. Then I spent another half a year in ANOC and O and I never had to go to SWIC, I think, because on my records, it shows me spending 2.5 years in SWIC in the middle of after I'd already been 18 series. And I think it confused the computer, but I never came up on SWIC orders.
Well, for better or for worse. You get that leadership time in later, though, when you get promoted. So,
Well, and you know what? I mean, I liked every way my career turned out, but when I was looking for jobs when I got out, because I didn't know what I was going to do, I didn't know I was going to be an editor. In fact, when I started out editing, I only made like 6,000 the first year because I had to find clients, I had to figure out the process and stuff. And so I was like, I should probably get a job while I'm trying to figure out how this works. I ended up getting a job as a benefits advisor, deputy European benefits advisor for the VA. But when I started looking for all the jobs that were out there, really wanted me to have SWIC instructor time. All the ones that were looking for SF stuff, right? And I didn't have that. I didn't have the official instructor school and all that, even though Green Berets are instructor I mean, I've been a Green Beret for 25 years teaching classes in South America and Spanish and in Afghanistan. But I didn't go to the official instructor school. So, so I was automatically, when USA jobs, they're like, "Hey, do you have this? You have this? Do you have this?" It's like, well, not really. So it was harder to find a job. It turned out okay in the end.
how was it when you settled into group life? I mean, because Rangers is completely different. People sent me messages. They're like, "Should I do Rangers or SF?" Like, oh man, that is not the same fucking thing at all. There's no comparing the two. How did you take that as a because it's a different pace of life?
Right. Um, First of all, I'd say, I mean, SFAS is a ball breaker, but it wasn't any worse than RIP for sure. And then the Q course was a gentleman's course for the most part. I mean, there's not a whole lot of physical requirements to get through the Q course. And then when I get to the team, I was the only Ranger qualified guy on my team, which doesn't mean anything, right? Um, so I get to the group. I don't even take leave out of the Q course. I'm so excited. I'm like, I can't wait. I want to deploy. I want to do cool Green Beret stuff. I got to tell you though, I didn't actually understand what a Green Beret was till I went to the course. I didn't know there was a John Wayne movie, and I didn't know there was a song till graduation, till they sang the song at graduation. And my parents gave me the cassette tape for the song as when I graduated. I'm like, "What's this?" He's like, "This is the song." He's like, "You know this song?" He's like, "Yeah, it's famous. It's Top of the Pops in 68 or whatever." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, so I had no idea. I didn't know the Green Berets were somewhat famous. I'd never heard of them before I went to the recruitment thing in the Rangers. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about the military. My family wasn't a military family. I grew up in Europe, going to the American schools in The Hague and in Amsterdam and London, and there was no recruiters there. I was never recruited to go in the army. So no one ever explained anything like that to me or what was there. I never read military books. I never had any aspirations to join the military, except when I finished high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. And I wanted to do cool things like jump out of airplanes, scuba dive, and rock climb. And I didn't have any money. And I figured if I could, the army would teach me some of that stuff. That's why I joined the army initially. And so I get to the battalion, and the guy's like, "Oh man, you're a Bravo? Great. We need someone to take over the arms room." And I said, and it's just the company sergeant major. And I was like, oh, no, it was a battalion sergeant major. And I was like, "Hey, sergeant major, I'm a 18 Bravo. I'm not an armor. I don't." He's like, yeah. But the battalions don't have, we don't have armors attached to the battalions. We use our 18 Bravos. I was like, I'm supposed to go to the A team, all right? And he's like, yeah, he'll go there eventually. I was like, well, so I'm replacing a guy, an 18 Bravo. He's like, yeah, he's been there for like 2 years. We got to get him on the team. I was like, holy crap, 2 years? He's like, well, you won't be there that long. I was like, how long am I going to be there? He's like, like 3 months. I was like, can I get that in writing? He's like, who the hell you think you are? I was like, you just told me the last guy was there for 2 years. He's like, get out of my office and report to the first sergeant. So I report to the first sergeant and I replace this guy. And at the time, the arms room was on the other side of post because the 3rd Battalion for 7th Group was in World War II barracks over by Pike Field. And the headquarters for 3rd Battalion, where the weapons was over where the new 7th Group area on Bragg was, over next to where 3rd Group is, right? And so I'm working. I don't even see anybody from 3rd Battalion. There's a first sergeant, a commander, and a supply guy and me in this building. I don't know anything about weapons except how to shoot them, but I don't know how to account for them. I don't know anything about weapons cards. I don't know anything about signing out weapons. I don't know what my responsibilities are. People start coming in and like, we're going to get weapons. I was like, great, just give me the buttstock numbers on the way out. So I'll keep track of it, but I'm not writing serial numbers down. I'm just glad nothing got lost I was there for 3 months, and then my first 100% inspection, I'm like, man, all these weapons are out of order. I didn't realize they were by team. So I took all the M4s and I put them in order by serial number. So it'd be easier to inventory for the 100%. and I was acing the inspections, but then when the teams came back, they're like, what in the hell's going on? And I was like, oh, that's why they were all mixed up. And so
That's
when
a sin.
yeah, I mean, I totally did. I'm glad nothing got, but I was the teams are only there for like 2 weeks and then they deployed. And when there's no teams, there's no one drawing weapons. And so I bought a beeper and I said, I'll be here at 1 to 4 every day. If you need me, beat me and I'll come in whenever you need me. And I worked out from 6:30 in the morning till noon every day. I showed up for first formation. I ran from the 7th Group area up to the 82nd 50-meter pool. I swam for an hour. I went across the street to the gym. I worked out for 2 hours. Then I ran back. Then I had lunch. Then I took a nap. And then I opened up the room, and then I went back to sleep because no one ever came and saw me. And then I checked out at 4:30, and I did that for basically 2.5 months. And
So you're a stud when you're ready to get to a team.
yeah, I wanted to be ready, right? And then while I'm there, something comes across my desk and it says, "Hey, we're looking for volunteers to go to Colombian Commando School, Lancero School, and you have to be Ranger qualified and have a 2-2 minimum of 2-2 or 2+2+ in Spanish," which I did. And I was like, "Yeah, it's me." Signed up, and the supply guy is there. Is like, "Hey, what's this Lancero School?" It's like Ranger School, but in Spanish. It's like it's got to be better in the arms room. So I sign up for it, and I'm in the distro because I'm a headquarters guy. That's the only reason I got it. And so I put it in there. I kept the copy. Like a week later, I called the number at the bottom, which is the the group operations sergeant major. And I don't know where the hell that guy is, and I don't know who he is. And I like, "Hey, how you doing? This is Staff Sergeant Surles. I signed up for Lancero last week. I was wondering, you know." He's like, What are you calling me for? Who are you?" It's like, "Yeah, you said the volunteer for Lancero. I signed up for it, and I was wondering if you guys had decided who's going." He's like, "No, we haven't figured it out yet." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." And I called back every week. He's like, "Quit calling, man." I was like, "Yeah, squeaky wheel gets the fucking cheese." And I was like, I kept
Did
calling.
you learn at all during this point what you had signed up for?
Not really.
Okay, good,
I
good.
mean, all I knew is Ranger School type thing, which was pretty much true. So finally, a week before my 3 months, I go to the sergeant major, and I'm like, "Hey, I got this." He's like, I know, I got your replacement coming down." I was like, "Okay." So the guy shows up, and I show him how I'm signing stuff out, and he's like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "I just made it up, man. I don't know what's going on." But I get 100% on the 100% every time they do it, so we're good. and so, and then I go to I get to my team. I go to Pike Field. They got these World War II barracks where we got our team rooms. They're like, "Hey, this is your new team." I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? We got 100% today. We don't have a medic. You went to the medic school, kind of. Why don't you lay out everything?" So I'm laying stuff out. The team leader comes over. Is like, no, I'm sorry. I get assigned to the B team. Like, what the fuck is the B team? I don't know what the B team is. So I go to the B team and I'm like, "What?" They're like the people who do the admin stuff for the A teams. I was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Your team's still deployed." I was like, "Ah." I'm following out the ops sergeant. I was like, "Hey man, what do you want me to do?" He's like, "I don't know. We'll find stuff for you to do." "Hey, can I go to SEER school?" When I was in SWIC, they said they never had enough people and you can just walk in. I think there's a class starting like this week or something. He's like, "Yeah, sure." So the next day, I don't tell anybody because he already gave me permission, and I don't know how this works. So I was a ranger, and now I'm not. And I went to SWIC, and I sat in the back of the room and waited for them to call everyone's name. And then when they got me, they saw me in the back, like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I heard you guys have extra slots sometimes." He's like, "I'm gonna see your paperwork. Hey, your physical's expired. It's 2 years old." It's like, "Yeah, I just got a Q course." He's like, "Oh, you just got a Q course?" He's like, "Yeah, I was assigned to seventh group." He's like, "Oh, I was in seventh group. Yeah, go ahead and get on the truck." So I go on the truck. I'm AWOL. I didn't know this, but they put me as AWOL at the B team. I go to SEER school for 3 weeks. I graduate. No one shows up because no one knows I'm there. I get back to the B team with my certificate, and they're freaking out. They're like, "What the? You're fucking AWOL." I was like, "You told me I could go to SEER school. I didn't mean to yesterday or last whatever you went." And he's like, "Well, you didn't. I told you it was going to happen this week, and now I told you on Thursday." And he's like, "Well, you have to sign out." I was like, "Where do I sign out? You sign out at the B team? You just told me I could go. Who am I signing out with?" And so they're like, "Yeah, well, your team came back, and we'll deal with this later, and go check in on your team." So then I went over to my team, and they had me laying out the medical gear, and the team leader comes over, and he's like, "Hey, I'm so and so. Glad to meet you. Hey, I saw your name. You want to go talk to the B team? I saw your name on a list to go to Lancero school." I was like, "Oh, cool." So I go over to the B team, and they're like, and the school's guy's like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "I was in SEER school. I just got out today." And he's like, "Yeah, so here's your orders to Lancero school. You leave on Monday." It's like Friday. He's like, you have to go get your ticket because back then you got your ticket issued at the central, and there was no credit cards back then. So you got like, here's your $10,000 for your per diem for the next 6 months or whatever. So I go back to my team sergeant. I'm like, hey, I got orders to Lancero school. I'm supposed to leave Monday. Do you mind if I take the rest of the day off and get it figured this packing list? He's like, sure. so, so I meet my team for an hour and then I spend all day buying the stuff and getting my tickets and everything. And Monday I'm on a plane ticket. I'm playing to Colombia. And I 4 months there. I lost like 50 pounds. I came out of there weighing 128. And I and I, I passed. And I come back and I get to my team room. I walk into my team room and no one recognized me. And they're like, "Hey, can we help you?" I was like, "I'm good." So I sit down to the desk they assigned me when I left, and I'm looking around, and people are like whispering behind my back, "Who is this guy?" Some of the guys are new; they got there after I left, and they're like, "Hey, man, are you in the right room?" It's like, "Yep." Finally, someone figures it out. Like, "Hey, it's that guy that went to Lancero school." I was like, "Oh shit, that's it, that's him." And my first team though, they were very bitter people because they they held it against me that I went to SEER school and Lancero school as a new Green Beret for 2 years. I was on the team for 2 years, and the whole team, and minus the team sergeant and the team leader is the only other Ranger qualified guy on the team. And for some reason, my senior Bravo, who I outranked because I got promoted to E6 before he did, was worried about his senior job. I don't know why, because the team sergeant decides who's the senior. I guess I don't. Why would he be concerned about it unless he sucked? But he wasn't Ranger qualified. He didn't have any special schools. He was, it didn't come from a Ranger battalion, and he was intimidated. And he just didn't teach me my job. So he didn't teach me how to get a range or get ammo or project ammo, all this stuff that you don't know if you don't how are you going to learn that if you're an infantry guy in the Rangers and then you get out of the Q course? So I had to like teach myself that. It was really a really very not a very great experience. My team kind of sucked, in my opinion, and not all of them, but most of them. And they were very. One guy's like, "You don't deserve to go to Lancero school. You should spend at least about 3 years on a team." It was like, well, obviously they didn't have enough volunteers, so they just not fill the slot. He's like, "Well, I've been trying to go there for 2 years." Like, well, not too hard because you didn't go to Ranger school and your Spanish isn't a 2+2+. So I don't know what you were thinking. Maybe you need to get on that. And he's like, and so they just, I'm sure I didn't help matters, but I was just talking logic. I'm the logic guy, right? And so basically, I was persona non grata for like 2 years, which is why I dropped my medic paper to go back to the medic course. And then I did, and so I went on 2 deployments with them, one to Honduras, one to El Salvador, and then I went back to the medic course, and that's when we already talked about that.
Delta, Bravo, and Fox by default because that was all worked in there. And then you got to be getting towards the tail end of the 90s now into 2000s.
Yeah,
And it's surprising to me that they were sending you to all these things, but you guys are at Bragg, so you can walk on to SEER and some other stuff.
right. I can
Because
walk on the steer.
some of the other guys that I had spoken to said there was no money to do anything at
Right.
certain
So
times.
there's no money exchange going to SEER school. I just walk over there and Swick takes me out. I'm living in the same place I'm living. There's no per diem. There's no nothing, no transportation.
So Lancero School's different from the mountaineering one that they send guys to that they almost die. It's like
That's
6 months.
that's in Chile. It's 6 months. It's a climbing school in Chile.
Yeah, that one's a pretty rough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that there was a guy that fell in there, I believe. It's a pretty hard one. They had a Colombian special forces school. I think they only sent one. They only did one class for that. They have a Brazilian jungle school where you like wrestle panthers or something.
That
Uh,
sounds terrible.
in the Colombian school you wrestle snakes, which is not, and electric eels. There's always, you're wrestling some kind of animal in every school. Apparently, it's a South American thing. I don't know, but and I got some kind of weird intestinal disease at the end. And like I said, I weighed 128 coming out of that school. That's why they didn't recognize me too, because I looked like I was Ethiopian or something. Not to be prejudiced against Ethiopians, but
No, that's fine. But you're running around in seventh. What was kind of the mood like? Does it just seem like, I mean, as normal as SF guy life can be in Garrison before 9/11? Is it just
so
normal schedule?
the great thing about seventh group is had the primary mission of all the groups, right? South America was
That was
active.
the place to go if you wanted to
Place
do
to go.
something.
Yeah, yeah. We had great trips. Um, we didn't always, we weren't always getting per diem or anything, but they were fun trips. We almost everyone on the team spoke moderate Spanish. I spoke fluent Spanish, especially after Lancero school. I spoke fluent Spanish that I needed for SF. Like I had like I would talk to people in the States that say this, they spoke fluent Spanish, but they don't know how to say machine gun or mortar or ambush or raid. So I spoke tactical Spanish because I went to Lancero school and I learned all the Ranger tactics in Spanish.
Hmm.
So I was a huge benefit down there. Also, Lancero School is known throughout all of South America as one of the primo schools. They send international students to the classes. And so no matter what country I went, if I wore the badge, I was looked up to, treated differently. And when I was in Colombia, I was treated a lot differently. Uh, when I went to work there in the embassy many years later, the mill group commander, the colonel, would take me with him to meet the generals in the outer reaches of Colombia, because he would meet with all the army people and the generals and stuff. And when we walk in the room, usually the colonel or the general, whoever we're seeing, couldn't take his eyes off my Lancero badge. And the first point of conversation after the handshakes was, "You went to Lancero school. When did you go?" Because it's always like who went earlier is a point of status. Like, what class were you in? And the lower class number is the winner. Uh, so I went to Columbia in 2007, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But I went to the Lancero course in 1993, which was the same year they killed the big drug guy. What's his name? Uh, they made a movie about him. I forget. Uh, anyway, they cornered the big drug guy. I mean, they actually pulled us out of class to watch the hit. But anyway, so most of the time, especially by 2010,
Escobar.
Escobar. By 2010, I'm beating out the generals. Like, I went in 93. I was class 200. They're like, yeah, I was in class 210. It's like, oh man, that sucks. But, and then we bullshit, and then the mill group commander would get whatever work he needed to get done. And then that general would like, hey, come down and visit anytime, man. So it was a really great, it was a great opener for, especially when I was down there as a team sergeant, meeting teams, meeting the units that we were training. It was a really good icebreaker for everything.
Yeah, I imagine.
Going back to seventh group, right? So we had missions. Well, also I was in third battalion. So the SIF company was one of the companies in third battalion, which means we only had two companies. So we had 12 teams, and we had green, amber, and red cycle back then. And so when you were deploying, you were on green cycle, and every battalion would get on green cycle would get the missions. Well, they always had at least 12 missions, but they didn't always have 18 missions down in South America. And we only had 12 teams to do the 12 missions. And if they had 13, then we'd have to request a team from one of the other battalions. So every single year, because I was in the low battalion because the SIF took up one of the companies. I deployed for 3 to 9 months every single year from 1993 until I left in 2015 for the most part. Sometimes I deployed twice a year.
Explains a few things, obviously. I mean, that's rough on anybody's trying to have a normal life back home, especially when you're back and forth to South America all that much.
And when Afghanistan kicked off, we would do Afghanistan, and then we would come back, and whoever we would people go and leave and stuff, but someone would have to go on Advon to South America because we were still keeping up on our South America missions. So we go to Afghanistan, come back, send a couple people Advon or not Advon, PDSS to South America to plan the mission. And then inevitably, before leave was over, probably or during pre-training, someone was going to have to do Advon, and then we'd be off in South America almost. I mean, I literally went to Afghanistan for 9 months, and a month and a half later, I was in Colombia.
Yeah. All that shit. That's because when you look at the schedule over the global war on terror, like that was just in addition to all of the shit that we were already doing. That didn't go away. It still continued to happen. It's just now you have to do a 6-month combat rotation mixed in there around all of these J sets and um, uh, training missions and all this other shit all over the world that mixed in there. And now that's all going to go away, and it's going to seem like we're not doing anything. But man, like no, that it's just we're just doing we're going to go back to the regular job now.
Yeah. And then I was in ASOT when 9/11 hit. And then I went to Afghanistan in 2022 or 2002, like right after, probably almost a year exactly after 9/11. And I was attached to 20th Group because 20th Group didn't have any human guys. And so I was attached to them to do human. And that was interesting because, you know, the National Guard are kind of a little bit different than the active duty. Um, and they didn't trust me. They didn't know who I was. They didn't understand really why I was there, why they needed me. And it was hard to get in. I did eventually, I think, uh, become one of the team, but it was hard. It was hard. I had to volunteer for everything and do all the dirty jobs until they realized I wasn't there to hurt anyone. And so I did that for 9 months or so. And then I went back to Afghanistan as a team sergeant in 2005 and 2006. And then when I came back in 2006, I went straight to Colombia with my team. And then at the beginning of 2007, when we came back from Colombia, I PCS to Colombia for 4 years.
What are you thinking about your career at this point? Because you go in the Rangers and you're like, okay, am I going to get to where I want to? Am I going to be a squad leader in the Rangers? Okay, we're going to go over to SF, and now it's becoming a career, and then in SF, and then 9/11 happens, and everything changes at this point. What are you thinking about how this is becoming part of your life at this point? And that because it does become the only thing after a while. And what do you think about this change that's happening in your life?
Um, well, first of all, I was very fortunate with my combat tours. I got hurt in Panama, went to Afghanistan 3 times. No one from my team died. Very few of them even got severely injured, whether it was because we were just doing everything right or luck or a mixture of both. I don't know. I mean, we were in Jalalabad, which was one of the most dangerous places back in the before 2010, before it got built up. They built it up as much as they did. I mean, it used to be called IED Alley. There was IEDs going off all over the place, and we only got hit by one, and no one really got injured. One person got semi-injured. So the that was fortunate. So I don't have a lot of the stress from the war that a lot of people had who lost, who saw. I mean, I had friends that got killed from other teams, from other companies, but I didn't see it. I didn't witness it. I wasn't in the middle of it. So I had a different experience than a lot of my peers. South America was always fun for me. I spoke fluent Spanish. I enjoyed teaching the troops. I think a lot of other groups depend on their interpreters and maybe don't get as close as you do in South America with these people. Plus, because I was Lancero, I was always embraced with open arms at all the units that we worked with. So I don't think when I got I wasn't even really excited to get E8 because it was actually a pay loss. I was on a scuba team, and the E8 pay was less than losing my scuba pay. And that's kind of how I was looking at life at the moment. But then I had a couple bad team sergeants, and I was like, screw it. So one of the problems and one of the things I didn't really completely understand at the time is I didn't have jump master, and I really hated jumping especially after Panama. I realized there's a lot of stuff I couldn't control, and it just wasn't my favorite thing to do. And I hated the waste of time, and I just hated jumping. And I knew if I was a jump master, it would just be more wasted time becoming certified as a jump master and maintaining my certification and having to get everywhere early and all that garbage. And so I was just like not interested in jump master. And my team sergeants kept saying, you have to have jump master to get promoted. And I was like, where does this say that? I don't believe you. Sometimes you guys just say stuff, but I didn't get promoted. And in a lot of ways, I was way ahead of my peers. I had Ranger School and a CIB, and I had 2 CIBs. Actually, I had 2 CIBs and a medical combat badge too, because I went over as an 18 series, 18 Delta, and then that second time I went over as an 18 Zulu. So I don't know how many people have that. But uh, the I had all the right stuff, but I didn't I wasn't getting promoted. I wasn't even coming up on the 8 list, which I was fine with. And people were saying I had to go to Jump Master. So I finally went to Jump Master and I got promoted like the next month. Like the list came out and I got promoted. And so I was like, I guess that was it. And then, but I made Sergeant Major within 4 years, which I didn't expect. But in retrospect, I had a college degree plus all that other stuff that was still going for me. Good NCRs. So I wasn't expecting it, and at the time, they were offering a huge bonus at 19 years. So I made it to 19 years as an E8, and they offered $150,000 for 6 more years. And I'm like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And the problem with that money at the time was it wasn't retroactive to the people who were already sergeant majors and already over 20 years, right? They could get smaller pieces of it, but they couldn't get the whole 150. And if they were over 25, they couldn't get any of it. Or if they're over 23, they couldn't get any of it. So there was a lot of, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but there was a lot of people saying the words like, it's blood money and you're going to pay for it. And so people would take the 150, which they are eligible for. It was a re-enlistment incentive. And then they're locked in for 6 years and they would get shit jobs, especially if they didn't have anybody protecting them and looking out for them. They would just get shit jobs. And somehow, before I signed on the dotted line, I was looking out for my next job, because as an E8, you go to staff, right? Well, that's pretty much where you end up. But there's a lot of other jobs out there. There's ROTC jobs. There's this job in Colombia. There's another job in El Salvador. There's another job in Peru. There's these jobs that people just didn't know where to look because no one taught them, and I figured it out. And so I told my sergeant major, battalion and company sergeant major, this is what I want to do. As I was coming into the team sergeant position, there's another team sergeant leaving. I'm like, where are you going anyway? He's like, I'm going to Colombia. I was like, how did you get that job? He's like, he kind of told me. I was like, remember that. And I, like a year out, I told everyone what I wanted to do. I I pitched it. I got assigned to that job a year out before I signed for the blood money, and I got locked into it. And then I went over there for 4 years, picked up sergeant major 2 years later, and when I came back as a sergeant major, I had to take a company, so no one could really screw with me. But I think by then the the atmosphere had changed and people had accepted that this was a that most of the people were getting it. Most of the people that were in charge of me had already gotten the blood money, so they no one was really holding it against anyone by then. So by the time I got back, though, I only had 2 years left. So I took a company over, and then I didn't have to re-enlist anymore. But as a sergeant major, I had some pretty good jobs, and they gave me an extra $800 a month as a sergeant major. So I just stuck. I just kept staying in. Uh, and I said the last job I wanted, I told my last sergeant major of group, I said I want to go to Europe. He's like, well, that's usually 10th group. I was like, I speak fluent Spanish, I speak Portuguese, I speak French, and I speak Dutch. I think I speak more languages than most people in 10th group speak, and I'm a good soldier. So if there's an opportunity to go to Europe and no one's doing it, I'll go anywhere. But I know there's a Sergeant Major Academy Special Forces 18 Zulu slot in the Sergeant Major Academy in Holland. And I lived in Holland for 5 years, and I probably the only SF Sergeant Major that speaks Dutch. You don't have to send me to Dutch school. And so he went to the where they decide who gets what job. And that year they decided they weren't going to fill that sergeant major position. There was a guy there who was a Dutch American that I knew who had had that position for like 8 years as an 18 Zulu. I don't think he'd ever been a company sergeant major. I don't think. Anyway, and he was retiring and they weren't going to fill it because they didn't think it was a valid position. So, but there was a new position in Italy that opened up for 18 Zulu, and no one had slotted. No one had a guy ready to go there, and so he put me in, and he asked if that was all right. I was like, "Yeah, that's great, man. I never been. Italy's great." So he's like, "All right, since I got you the job you wanted, you have to go to Kuwait for 8 months." So I went to Kuwait with a colonel, with the deputy commander, and we ran the SOF for Syria and Iraq out of Kuwait for 8 months. And a month after I got there, I get an email from HRC saying, "Hey, Sergeant Major Surles, you are the only 18 Zulu Sergeant Major who has a language qualifier in Dutch." And we have this position at the Sergeant Major Academy in Holland, and we want to know if you're interested in it. And I said, I got to talk to my boss because he got me this job in Italy, and I don't want to piss him off because I see what happens when you piss off your boss. So I talked to my boss and I said, hey, they asked me if I want this job in Holland, and you said they weren't going to fill it, but HRC hit me up, and I know you wanted me to go to Vicenza, which I'm fine with that. I would prefer to go to Holland, but obviously if you need me Vicenza, I'll go to Vicenza. And so he's like, you're going to Vicenza. I was like, all right. So I don't know what happened to the sergeant major job in Holland. I think they filled it with like an 18 Bravo, and they sent him to Dutch school in California.
DLI. I think most guys fall into jobs they don't want, or just they feel like the military or the army is going to take care of them. Oh, the army will take care of me. No, the fuck it won't. Like,
Yeah.
it will not take care of you at all. You go needs of the army, and it's just as simple of avoiding that as just asking, going in and saying, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I don't want to do that. Can you have me something?" He goes, "Oh yeah." And he picks up a sheet of paper. "I need this guy to go to Just Mag Thai in Thailand. Can you do that?" Okay, cool. Because me, as the battalion tasking NCO, just walked over and went, "I need somebody to go live in Ulaanbaatar tomorrow." And that shit happens all the time. And if you just say, hey, go in there once a week to sergeant major and say, hey, I'm looking to get out of this. I don't want to do this. And it might not work out, but I mean, I got a rotation to Korea once because I just was at the sick call and my buddy sat down and said, we're going to Korea. And I left, went to my sergeant major, said, can I go with them? He's like, yeah, go over there. All right. Just come back when you're done. You
I
know,
think I've seen a lot of people try to underhand get their job instead of telling their chain of command what they want to do. Like, but not tell them like 2 months before they're supposed to, get out of the position. Tell them like a year out, like, this is what I want to do. So it's in their head, right? Because they're going to have to do positioning, especially in the enlisted arena, right? The sergeant major is going to have to give recommendations to the group sergeant major. The battalion sergeant major is going to have to give recommendations to the group sergeant major. The company sergeant major is going to have to give recommendations to the battalion sergeant major. If you don't communicate to these people what you want, they're not going to know. You're definitely not going to get it. And if you try to get it secretly, I've seen people do this where they communicated to DC about a job in DC they want, and the guy they think the guy in DC's got more power than his chain of command because he's working for a senator or whatever. And they're like, you're in. You did the interview. You're good. You're the guy we want. And like, awesome. And then when they say, you're going to go to whatever, you're going to go to the S3 shop. Like, no, I'm not. I'm going to DC. That's what the senator said. And then they're like, really? And then they talk to the general and Spec Def and, hey, this guy, we need this guy here. And the senator's like, I don't care. I don't care who I get. I just want an SF guy here. It was his staff guy that made the guarantee. And then that guy and is like, now you're not, you don't have to go to the S3 shop now. You can go to some freaking jungle village in Brazil that we can't find anyone to go to. How about that? And then you just piss people off, right? So I feel like, I mean, I made the choice to go to SF kind of uninformed. But after I figured out the system, I was like, I want to go to Colombia. Okay. I told him year out, 2 years out, a year out, 6 months out. Okay. I'm locked in. I told him, hey, I want to go to, I want to go to freaking Europe, and I told him, whenever he counseled me, I'm saying, this is what I want to do. I want to go to Europe. I don't care about taking over a battalion. I got 4 years left. I'm at 26 years, 27 years. I'm not going to be a group sergeant major. You don't want me to be a battalion sergeant major. The Yusuf Fick doesn't want me to be a battalion sergeant. Yusuf Sak doesn't want me to be a battalion sergeant major because I'm never going to be a group sergeant major, Yusuf Fick sergeant major, or Yusuf Sak sergeant major. So they want to groom someone to be a battalion sergeant major. They're not looking at me. I know that. So I want to go to Europe. And that's where I went. So worked out. And I had a great time in Italy. And I probably wouldn't have walked the Camino if I hadn't been in Italy because it was so close. And I wouldn't have met my wife and I wouldn't be editing and, and then we wouldn't be here talking.
I don't know. Well, I get it. I have one of my questions that leads. The present is. It just is. All the options that were are gone and just are. There is no future. It's all in now. You can plan and do all these things. And I don't know. I have a weird way of looking at time, and I like astronomy and astrophysics. Even though I do not understand any of that stuff and how it works, I like the conceptual way of things like that. So, but yeah, we can go down any of those rabbit holes and other things. And I'm going to have you back on here because there's a whole like side of this. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, man, we can go another 3 hours on some of the other things. I'm like, why is he in Iran? Like, why are you growing up in the hills? Why have you been to 75 countries? So we're going to have you back on for a part 2. I'm up against it. Here. So, but I'm going to run you through the 5 questions and then I'll cut you loose. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right, brother. What is your response to thank you for your service?
If it's from a veteran, I'll thank them for their service. And if I know they're civilian or if I'm not sure if they're a veteran, I'll say, oh, thank you very much for saying that. But, and I really love my job, but I really appreciate you saying that.
Just be nice. Everybody, They're trying to be nice is what I've found. What's the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
I feel like it's like there's always a solution to the problem. I mean, the truth is I've never been in conventional forces, but I worked side by side on a base in Afghanistan with conventional sources, and they conventional forces, and they if something wasn't working out, like sometimes it was like, well, suck it up, as opposed to how do we overcome this and make it as successful as possible. I mean, I saw there was a unit right next to me in Jalalabad, and they had a subunit, maybe a platoon, out in the middle of nowhere, in this little castle type thing, and they were like totally undersupplied. But I mean, we would go past them on the way to on missions all the time, and we just bring an extra truckload of crap and drop it off there, and it made their day. I mean, it was just I don't understand why they had to make it so hard.
As you said that, one thing reminded me is I don't know if this was while I was in the regular army or when in the SF after I came over, but you know, in SF there's a solution to every problem. In the regular army, there's a problem for every solution. You create a problem for every solution,
Yeah.
uh, and just always working against yourself. All right, what is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive or redo, and it wouldn't change where you are now?
So, and it wouldn't change where I am now. Well,
No,
there is this. I'm gonna mention his name because he'll want me to. He's the president of the GWAT Memorial, Mike Rodriguez. Have you had him on your show? You should ask him to come on your show.
no, I'd love to have him on. I'm just learning about that memorial myself. I just get my news from memes and reels and stuff.
Michael Rodriguez was my medic, and when I was a team sergeant, and I was a medic, so I knew better, and I trusted him, and I trusted my other medic, and he was on the ATV a lot of times, and he would roll the ATV unbeknownst to us. He'd be out of sight and knock himself unconscious. I guess this happened a couple different times, and so he had a TBI as a result, and he would lose we would lose communication because he'd knock himself unconscious, and then we'd do the mission, and we're like, where freaks what if where's Mike, and finally he'd come up, sorry, the ATV, whatever, and he was self-medicating to get through the pain and stuff, and he was also the money guy, and so um he would go back. We would spend the money faster than I thought we would. He would go back to get monies to recover, to take a break, but he didn't want to let us down because he was our senior medic, and he didn't want to leave us without a medic. So he didn't want to be sent home or sent back to get looked at. And that's and I didn't notice. And I didn't notice the whole trip, and I wasn't paying attention. And he gets back, and he goes tries out for CAG, and he has some major seizures during the tryouts. And they're like, you need to go get some stuff fixed first. And he and I didn't know any of this because I was already in Colombia, and then I came back, and we seventh group moved to Florida, so he stayed in Bragg, and he called me as I was sergeant major of the company sergeant major. He called me in Florida, and he's like, hey man, well, first of all, I stopped by his house in Bragg after I came back from Colombia, and he I was like, he was a change. He was walking with a cane. He was stuttering. He looked bad. And his wife met me at the door. She's like, "Oh, Mike will be so glad to see you." And I was like, "What the?" And I just looked at him. I was like, "What the fuck is going on, Mike?" And he told me all this stuff I just told you, and he's told this number of times on YouTube and other things. And I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" And And so, we talked for a bit, and then I left, and he called me in Florida when he was getting out and asked me to write him a letter for the VA. And I was like, I don't even know what the hell's going on. You didn't tell him anything, man. So I wrote him a letter, and it said, and it described who he was before the trip, and who I saw, after, when I went up to see him, and how he was acting, how that change is, and what he claimed happened, and the missing time that I didn't know where he was lines up with all of what he says. And he ended up getting what he deserved from the VA. But if I had it all over it again, I would have been I would be much more present. I guess I find it hard to say I wouldn't trust my guys as much, but I would check up on them a lot more than I did probably.
Another guest I had on the show, medic as well, and he didn't recognize that the guy was going to all his medic buddies and getting the same medicine from all of them, and none of them recognized it, and he died. Uh, and he said the same exact thing. So I'm glad your guy didn't go that same route, but that's not a unique thing in SF. Is and it's strange because we think that way, but we just didn't recognize it, even at that level, with that level of coverage and knowing the people as well as we do, because we hide it really well. And as everybody who's come on my show, the problems coming out of the military and dealing with transition and separation and all that stuff, we hide that well too. And then all of a sudden you wake up and go, yeah, I'm sober and I went through all this shit. And everybody goes, fuck, me too. Oh, fuck. Well, we could have been fucking sitting around the campfire, kumbaya this whole time. Instead, no, we're isolated where we're at. So I'm glad that didn't happen to him. And it's tough that we look back and go, fuck, I should have known. Yeah, well, we couldn't take care of ourselves to begin with at that point. Um, Sometimes it's easier to take care of other people, and sometimes it's not. So, yeah. All right. What is the best piece of advice that you received during your career?
Best piece of advice, probably I should go to jump master school, obviously. I would have got promoted like 4 years earlier. But um I didn't I had some good team sergeants, and I had a couple good team leaders, but I don't feel like I had a mentor. I don't know if I had any great great advice. I made my own way for the most part. I know I didn't make it alone. I mean, there's got to be some people on the outside, but I didn't feel a lot of that that power lifting me up most of the time. I felt like I was clawing tooth and nail through to get what I wanted.
Well, if I were to pull out from your story, that would be to don't let things happen to you. Go out and make it happen for yourself. From everything you told me.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I didn't take no for an answer. They tried to. One thing we didn't get into. They tried to take Columbia away from me because they promised me for a year and a half, and I checked in every 2 months. Like, hey, we're good, right? Yeah, we're good. I even linked up with the guy down in Colombia I was replacing, got all the information, and I get off the plane off of Afghanistan, and the uh, the company and the battalion sergeant major are standing right there, and they're like, "Hey, you're not going to Colombia now." I was supposed to like leave in 6 months. I'm like, "What do you mean? What could possibly have changed?" Well, there's this job that only you can do that we're gonna. I was like, "That sounds like a bunch of bullshit." Like, what who am I? I'm a Spartan. You know, and it's like, well, you have to be a sergeant major, or you have to be a master sergeant, you have to be ASOC qualified, you got to finish your team sergeant time. And there's not a lot of people like that. It's like, really, I can name like 5 right now. And he's like, well, they're already spoken for. And they already have jobs assigned to them. It's like, so do I. And like, well, but yours isn't a real job. It's like a staff job. It's not supporting the group, right? And I was like, okay, what's this job? Like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. Back then we had the yellow pages, and they had the blue pages in the yellow pages in Bragg, and the blue pages were all the military units. So I looked through every single one of those pages and find out where the freak this job is. And it's in Yusufik. Turns out it's right across the street, but I didn't know that. So I call it up. And I was like, "Hey, is this the blah, 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 the blah, 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 the blah?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is Chief whatever." I was like, "Hey, Derek, what's going on, man? This is Randy." He's like, "Randy, what's going on?" Like, "Hey, I think I'm supposed to go over there." I was like, "Oh, this is a great job, and Jason's here." Like all these guys I went to the Q course with they're all warrants now. So it's 4 warrants and a master sergeant coordinating uh, Achilles, whatever, red dot, yeah, Achilles dagger, jo- uh, throughout the year for all the groups. That's the job, and the warrant officers are too busy to do it, so they want a master sergeant with all these qualifications that only I have and 5 other people to do it. He's like, and I was like, "Oh, hey, where are you?" It's like right across the street. He's like, "I'll be there in 5 minutes." I go over there, walk into like 5 safe doors, no windows, and they're super secret and they tell me the whole job. Yeah, this is great. You get a PT on your own. It's great for people who are wounded. It's like, I'm not wounded. It's like, or hurt. I was like, not hurt. And they're like, and da, 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 da. I was like, this looks like a big waste of time. It's like, you guys, you don't want this job? We got people lined up around the block. I was like, call them up. So they do. They find another guy to do it from another group. And I know I stepped on my crank now because that screws up all their little checker pieces where who's going where, right? So I go back to my company sergeant major or I go. I know I say, hey, I'm going to talk to the group sergeant major because he's the one that made this decision, and I know there was a guy that volunteered to do it, and then they said, no, we want to make sure he makes sergeant major, so we're going to give him a first sergeant position. So he can't do it. So he told them he was going to do it, and then he balked in Afghanistan. That's why they needed to fill it. So I was like, I want to talk. So I talked to the group sergeant major. I was like, hey, they found a volunteer. It's like, they found a volunteer? How'd they do that? I was like, I went over there. I told them I didn't want to do it. And they said, we got people that want to do it. And they found a volunteer. He's like, was it from 7th group? I was like, nope. He's like, okay, good. You're off the hook. You can go to Columbia. I was like, okay, okay. So yeah, make it, don't take no for an answer. I mean, eventually you might have to, but if you don't try, you definitely won't get what you want.
Last one, man. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
I was afraid of I was going to let my guys down, especially when I was in charge over there, that they were going to get hurt or die because of decisions I made. And so I think that was my biggest fear in combat. And now I'm afraid that I have bad habits left over from when I was in the military because I went through a number of marriages and lost families along the way. And I sometimes they, like when I was doing that book, they rear their evil head, and I got to tone them back. And I don't, I'm afraid, I'm afraid it'll damage my relationship with my wife. I'm pretty sure it won't because she's really strong and she loves me to death. But I'm always afraid that I'll go into over focus mode and uh and not put her first.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Randy, it was great talking with you today. We're gonna have to have you back and go into down some of these other rabbit holes and do a part two. How can everybody find you on the socials and your website if they so choose?
Yeah, website is www the story ninja or with or without an s.com or www.militaryeditor.com. I'm at the story ninja with underlines between the words in Instagram, and you can look my name up on LinkedIn. Um, one thing I should have mentioned right up front in case they don't listen to all 3 hours of this. I got a skill bridge program. I don't know if you can cut this and put it in front, but that'd be great. But we got this skill bridge program where people transitioning service members. I don't have any Green Berets, never had a Green Beret sign up or a SEAL or a Ranger, mostly Coast Guard, Space Force, Navy, Air Force. But I have a 8 to 16 week transitioning service members can join SkillBridge. I will mentor you through writing your book, or I'll mentor you to be a freelance editor like me, where you can live in Spain if you want, or live wherever you want because you work for yourself, and make a pretty decent living, not traveling around working for people you don't like or don't want to be associated with. Like that's what I did. I went in isolation and live in Spain in an olive field somewhere. Um, and so I have that, and also I'm trying to start up a nonprofit. I should have it set up by the end of the year to pay for people to learn how to write, which means you don't have to be a transitioning service member anymore. You could just be a, a veteran or an active duty service member, and I'll spend time with you with your writing and your or editing, whatever you'd like to do. And so if you are interested in either one of those, you can email me through my website, or you can email me at randall.surles@gmail.com, or the story ninja at gmail.com, either way. And I'll put you on a wait list for my nonprofit. And if you are a transitioning service member, I can get you started as soon as you want to start, and teach you how to write and edit.
Yeah, man. I'll cut this all up into content reels and an episode and promotion. I'll even put there'll be another reel coming out later today after I get back from the gym that we did record. So I appreciate you coming on. You got anything for me, brother?
No, man, it was great. I don't. I come in. I'll come in tomorrow if you want to do another one tomorrow. But I know you got people lined up. So whenever you want to talk to me about whatever, I'll come in again. It was pretty fun to go over my whole life, which I haven't
Yeah.
done.
No, absolutely. I'm trying to replenish the stocks right now, and I'm definitely putting in that little quite obsessed workout ethic right now. But it allows me to go off and make some money and then come back, and then I can do a lot of this off of my phone. But the this part I have to be fully invested in is sitting here and talking to my guests, and that's the most important part of all the content, is taking the time and listening and talking to my guests. And then everything else is extremely difficult and sucks. But this is the best part.
If you're, if you're interested in writing a book, man, just let me know. We can do like an hour discovery call for free and just talk about, like, get you some. I got some questions for you to think about and stuff like that. If you want to, you trying to figure out what your theme is, or what the direction of what you want. Even if you're doing a combination of all the stuff all the people you've interviewed and all the things you've learned, we could probably come up with a common theme all the way through it, stuff like that.
It's back there. It's way back in my head, but it is there, and it's always one of the options. So it's I don't know where lesser known operators is going to go, but it's gonna it's gonna take care of me and a lot of other people someday. So we'll get it figured out, brother. I appreciate you coming on. I had a good time talking to you. Bye, everybody.